Chapter 966. The moment movie queen and finished her sentence. Bo Jio's phone rang in her pocket. The unique ringtone made her pause. She whipped her phone out. The caller ID wasn't displayed, but the string of numbers was extremely familiar to her. Besides, she knew that Hoshino wouldn't have called her if it wasn't something serious. Bo Jio turned to movie queen and, "Apologies, I have to take a call." Then she stood up. When she reached the entrance, her entire aura changed, especially her eyes, which seemed to be covered with a layer of light. It made her look like a devil in the night, dangerous and mysterious. "Hello." Something happened to Rao Rong. Hoshino swiped the screen. "Everyone in the esports industry is saying that there's something fishy about your match." "Fishy?" Bo Jio arched a brow. Hoshino replied. "Someone said that Rao Rong didn't go all out in the match and lost intentionally because someone placed a bet on the match. If Supreme Alliance won, the other party would earn a lot. That isn't all. The crime squad has taken Rao Rong away, claiming that there is evidence pointing towards Rao Rong being the mastermind behind the maiden sacrifice. The organization wants to push Rao Rong out to divert everyone's attention." Bo Jio's gaze deepened. The son of a hero shouldn't be treated this way. Rao Rong worked harder than anyone else in that match. If it wasn't for him, the other party would have lost badly. Hoshino broke into a warm smile. "Shall we take action?" Bo Jio glanced at the sky. "Let's meet outside the police station. It seems like you've already thought of a way to slap them in the face." Hoshino hooked the keys on the table. "I'll prepare the costumes and props. Which one do you need?" Bo Jio took a moment. "A wooden guitar, a white t-shirt, a black trench coat, a mask, hair dye, and a motorcycle, something cool." "What are you going to do?" Hoshino glanced down at the information in his hands. "You're going to use a guitar?" Bo Jio lifted her lips, a hint of devilishness in her eyes. "Since I'm returning, I need the audience to prove it. If not, I won't be able to answer to their efforts in impersonating me." "You're breaking the rules again." Hoshino's eyes lit up brightly, as though he had been in a daze for a long time. "I understand, I'll see you in a bit." "See you in a bit." Bo Jio hung up and turned towards movie queen, who was watching her. She felt slightly embarrassed. She wanted to see the Almighty again, but time was tight and he might not want to see her. Bo Jio knew that the Almighty was still angry and it would be best if she could stay. But compared to that, she had more important matters to attend to. "Auntie, I have something urgent to attend to, I have to leave." Movie queen could tell from Bo Jio's expression that the youngster had something urgent to attend to. At her age, she was able to see the bigger picture. "All right, you can go ahead. It's time to make my cold son anxious. Otherwise, he will never understand that sincerity is the most important thing in a relationship. Brother Mo is great. It's my fault, I wasn't sincere enough." Movie queen watched the youngster's serious expression and couldn't help breaking into a smile. Who would take the blame? Her cold son must have accumulated good fortune in his previous life to have met such a sensible child like Joe. Movie queen glanced at the youngster's serious face and couldn't help but laugh. Who would take the blame? Her cold son must have accumulated good fortune in his previous life to have met such a sensible child like Joe. Movie queen chuckled. "Joe, you'll be at a disadvantage. If he dares to bully you in the future, tell me. I'll be on your side." Movie queen chuckled. "Joe, you're at a disadvantage. If he dares to bully you in the future, tell me. I'll be on your side." Movie queen chuckled. "Joe, you'll be at a disadvantage. If he dares to bully you in the future, tell me. I'll be on your side." It had been the same when she had been young. On the surface, she seemed to be at a disadvantage. But in reality, every time something happened, he would be the one shielding her. A family like Madame Anne's had high standards for upbringing. Grandpa was even more so. He had raised the Almighty like a prince. He played the piano well and knew how to play chess. While she had been wandering outside like a clay figurine, the Almighty had come to meet the foreign guests in his little suit. The In family's house was right next to theirs. Even though it was the same villa, the In family's house was clean. Every time she climbed over the wall and knocked over a flower pot, Grandpa would ask and the Almighty would say that he had accidentally knocked it over. There had been one time when she had opened the In family's safe. The Almighty had taken the blame for her. He had been punished by Grandpa to stand for a long time. If it had been the Almighty, he would never have made such a mistake. In his eyes, such mistakes were childish. He had never been punished by Grandpa, and Bojo could still remember the way her little puppy had stood in the middle of the living room. He hadn't been impatient at all. But he hadn't been happy at that time. When he had tugged her hand over, his expression had been cold. "Little Bojo, are you an idiot? Bring the medicine box over. Bring me the first aid kit. If I find any blood on your hands on my sheets, I'll throw you out the window." Bojo was used to such threats. She didn't think much of it. Besides, the Almighty had been the one who had bandaged her hand. He probably didn't mind it being dirty. That day, she had hugged her little puppy and slept soundly. Before he had fallen asleep, he had muttered in her ear, "You're so stupid. I guess the safe has to be changed." From that day onwards, all the locks in the In family's house had been changed to electronic. Back then, Bojo had told herself that she would take good care of her little puppy. That was probably the reason why Bojo didn't want to receive that person's hateful gaze one day. Movie Queen and watched as the youngster lowered her gaze. She reached out to push Bojo, a faint smile on her face. She had the demeanor of a mature queen. "All right, you can go now. I'll talk to Brother Mo." Bojo didn't have time to stay any longer. But it was good that she had left. The Almighty would probably come down for dinner after she left. After leaving the military courtyard, Bojo glanced at the time on her phone. Then she hopped into a taxi. As the city lights lit up, the night came to everyone's side. The nightlife in the city center started to get lively. There would always be many people near the commercial plaza. The most eye-catching advertising screens hung on the skyscrapers. Everything was a show of life. In the study room on the second floor of the Chin family's house. Chapter 967. The computer screen lit up, a familiar sound reverberating in the study room. It was the sound of a player entering the game. It could be said that this was the first special effect used in the video. As the video unfolded like a story, the game characters appeared. Chin Mo looked at the two familiar IDs, his eyes widening in shock. This was, before that guy had joined Supreme Alliance, when they had cleared a dungeon together? No. That wasn't right. Chin Mo looked at the video, his game character and the youngster's game character dashing towards the other party's wilderness like two gusts of wind. This wasn't just a video of them clearing the instance. It was all the video clips of the two of them fighting side by side. From the moment they first met to the current National League, every scene was presented in this manner by her. Of course, Chin Mo knew how much time and effort it took to edit these videos. Moreover, some scenes had to be searched. He had originally thought that this was the end. But it wasn't. At the end of the video was the photo they had posted on their official Weibo. A line of words appeared on it. "I hope to have someone like you, like the cool breeze in the mountains, like the warm light in the ancient city, from morning to night, from the wilderness to the canyon. As long as it's you, it's all good." Chin Mo didn't head down because he had seen this video clip. It wasn't long, only around 7 to 8 minutes, but it was hard to believe that it was during normal times. But when he saw the last sentence, Chin Mo forgot to move, he just stared at the computer screen. For the first time, he felt that even if it was out of his control, it wasn't a bad thing. His heart seemed to be struck by something. He couldn't help but stand up and walk down the stairs, his eyes scanning the surroundings as though he was looking for someone. There wasn't anyone on the sofa, at the dining table, or even in the kitchen. Chin Mo wanted to search the other side. Movie Queen walked over and stopped him. "You don't have to look, he has left." Chin Mo's fingers paused, his brows furrowing. Left? It should be something urgent, you. Before movie queen could finish her sentence, her well-mannered son grabbed his jacket from the sofa and walked out the door without turning back. He was still fuming. It was rare for movie queen to be so impatient. She strode over. Son, don't blame me for not reminding you. Joe seemed to have received a call from a friend. It seems like that friend treats Joe pretty well. You have to understand that there are many people who have feelings for Joe. If you continue to be so cold, you might really lose Joe. It's better to have a sense of crisis in a relationship. Even without his mother's reminder, Chin Mo already knew. Otherwise, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Chin Mo could get whatever he wanted and had the dominant position in this relationship. But in reality, if anything happened, she would be the one who could leave easily. However, it was enough. After Chin Mo saw the video, he told himself that since she didn't want to say something, there was no need to say it. Including Hoshino. All he wanted to do now was find that girl, take her in his arms, and tell her that she belonged to him. Chapter 968. In the early summer, every city had its own way of life. Northerners liked to drink beer with spicy crayfish and meat skewers. Southerners rarely ate spicy food, but they would go shopping with a few girlfriends. Although these were different, there were still similarities. There would be many people gathered in the commercial square of every city. It was even more so in a metropolis like Zhongcheng. The big screen hanging on the building was very high visibility. Not only the people standing there, but even the cars going back and forth could see clearly what was on it. Under normal circumstances, it would be the advertisements of various celebrities. At around 7 p.m., the sky was not dark yet. This was the time when Zhongcheng was the most congested. In the middle of the bustling street, located in the commercial city center, was a landmark of China. Cars that came here would have to wait for a period of time even if they were unwilling. Everyone knew the reason. It was too risky. The commercial square had a wide range of activities. There were coffee shops like Starbucks, Burger King, etc. There was also a small fountain in the middle. Many people were walking back and forth. There were young people chatting, old people with children, and even a group of cool high school students playing skateboards. At this time, a pure black tomahawk, like a beautiful wild leopard, stopped in front of the fountain with a swoosh, and a handsome tail swing attracted almost everyone's attention. In front of everyone was a tall and straight young man. His long legs supported himself by the side of the motorcycle. Then, he got off the motorcycle nimbly and took off his helmet, revealing a pair of deep peach blossom eyes. The young man was wearing a black mask, so people couldn't see his face clearly. Even so, just looking at his figure made people's hearts beat faster. So handsome. This was the exclamation of the girls. The guy at the side raised his eyebrows. That car is really handsome. It was a limited edition. How much did it cost? I'm talking about the person. As the girl said that, she turned back to look at the young man who brushed past her. She mumbled, "He's really handsome. He's holding a guitar. Is he going to sing? I want to stay and listen. Why didn't he take off his mask? I want to see how handsome he is. He definitely didn't take it off because he doesn't look handsome wearing it. That's fine too. Leave some room for imagination. What song do you guys think he will sing? That's hard to say. It's coming." The onlookers were all very enthusiastic. After all, the sight of such a handsome young man with his face turned to the side and tuning his guitar was enough to make people stop. Not to mention the equipment the young man had brought. Instead of the usual microphone, he wore something that looked like a headset on his ear. The crooked part was a small microphone. Needless to say, the youngster looked even more handsome with the equipment. Then, the young man smiled at the girls who were looking at him. A series of exclamations could be heard. "I can't take it anymore. It's so cool. The young man lowered his head, took out some wires, and inserted them into a small notebook. Just when countless people thought that the youngster was playing a small sound system to make it easier for him to choose the music, the computer screen had actually been split into two parts. This was because the USB drive that was plugged into it had already determined that this was a network intrusion. As for where the intruder was, Bojio glanced over, a smile on her face. Her silver short hair was now black and stuck to her left ear. The diamond earring reflected the lights, glinting like a black gem. His slender fingers moved up and down on the keyboard. His hand speed was so fast that no one saw the codes that appeared one after another on the screen and the dialog boxes that kept popping up. It wasn't difficult for her to hack into a commercial plaza since there was a public network here. There were countless people using the Wi-Fi account. It was easy to create a loophole in the system. In a short 30 seconds, Bojio had broken through the firewall of the shopping mall. From the surveillance room, she controlled the broadcasting rights of the entire plaza. At the same time, she set up many virtual IPs. Bojio wasn't worried that the police would lock onto her. The logic was simple. Anyone in the commercial plaza would be holding onto an electronic product. Regardless of whether it was a phone or a laptop, it would become the originating IP. But she still had to speed up. She was most afraid of going up against the Almighty. Fortunately, Smith was in charge of the crime squad. It's time to greet an old friend. Bojio smiled faintly. She pressed the enter button and hid the dialog box. She hugged her guitar and straightened her body. This time, Bojio was back to Z's style. She wanted to tell the police that she was here and that they could catch her if they had the ability. Shall we start? The girls couldn't wait any longer. Bojio tilted her head, making the final adjustments. Her voice rang out. Hey, MMH, sound test. He's so cute. You call him cute no matter what he does. It's just a sound test. Are you jealous? You should grow up like him. I'm your boyfriend, not him. What's there to be jealous about? Even though that was what she said, the jealousy in her voice could be heard. The girl smiled sweetly at the side. As more and more people crowded over, Bojio finally lifted her lids. When she looked at them, her clear voice rang out slowly. Use your good morning to accompany me for dinner. Remember to save your thoughts in the piggy bank. I look at the twinkling stars in the sky. I hear the cowherd telling the weaver girl to be brave. When the voice rang out, everyone's eyes lit up. Even through the mask, the charm of the youngster's voice couldn't be suppressed. But, what song is that? It's so good, I've never heard it before. Is the generation gap here? Come over, let your boyfriend explain it to you. You were still in primary school when the song was released. Go, don't disturb me. Perhaps it was because the youngster's eyes were too beautiful, or perhaps it was because of the gentleness in her clear voice. More and more people stopped. Bojio sang softly, her lips curving up. Aren't you afraid that we are on opposite ends of the earth, watching your greeting? Riding a magic carpet, flying at the speed of light to me. You let me see the North Star and the Cross Star as a companion, without my arm as a pillow. Are you used to it? Your telescope can't see the loneliness of my northern hemisphere. The Pacific Ocean's tides follow the earth back and forth. I'll wait patiently, waiting for the day you reach the shore. When she reached the word shore, she turned and glanced at Hoshino, who was smiling faintly at her. Both of them were wearing masks, but they exuded different auras. If the young man was cool to the point of being devilish, then Hoshino, who was standing quietly in the crowd, was like spring water flowing in the mountains, like a prince. With their chemistry, they just needed a look to start the operation. In that instant, Hoshino broke into a smile, glancing up. There was a loud swoosh. The big screen that was originally playing the advertisements suddenly changed, and a big Z appeared. No, it wasn't just the various screens in the commercial plaza. It was also the same word that appeared on the phones of the people walking in the crowd. Some people who had watched sci-fi blockbusters immediately thought that it was a hacker attack. The entire commercial plaza was in an uproar. Everyone was fiddling with their phones, but the screen was frozen, not moving at all. At this moment, a manipulated voice appeared on the various screens in the plaza. Before I introduce myself, I have to greet my old friend. Smith, I heard that you came all the way from the Fifth Avenue to China just to catch me. TSK, the more you suffer, the braver you become. Even after so many failures, you still refuse to give up. But I'm really annoyed that you mistook me for someone else. The moment this sentence came out, it immediately attracted the attention of the police. The commercial plaza immediately took measures to remove the network intrusion. But when they sat at the service counter, they realized that the computers were no longer under their control. The network attack this time was too sudden, but it didn't affect the normal operations of the shopping mall. It only occupied the screen. But even so, the people in charge of the shopping mall expressed that they had never encountered such a situation before. Usually, large shopping malls like this would have police cars parked nearby. The patrolling policeman reacted quickly, informing the station at the first instance. It could be said that the local police station was busy to a new height that day. Such a case was too unique and had a negative impact. They couldn't handle it properly, so they could only report it to the higher-ups. At that time, Smith was sitting in the interrogation room, looking at Rao Rong opposite him. He arched a brow. I finally caught you, Z. Rao Rong didn't speak, his hands cuffed. His brows were the same as before, but the corners of his lips curled up, revealing traces of mockery and sorrow. The arrest came very suddenly, and the accusations were overwhelming. Honestly speaking, he didn't mind going in. If his father could be vindicated, he was willing to do anything. But the moment the crime squad charged into the club, he clearly saw that person's gaze had dimmed. He was probably disappointed. Be it him or his team members. Rao Rong lowered his lids, glancing at his cuffed hands. Who knew that he used to really love esports? Why aren't you speaking, Z? Smith chuckled, looking confident. You don't have to think of an excuse to escape. China isn't like the Fifth Avenue, you can't escape even if you want to. While Smith was speaking, Lin Shentao and his team members were being interrogated beside Rao Rong. Regarding Rao Rong, I would like Mr. Lin to provide us with some evidence, the interrogator said politely. Lin Shentao hadn't said a word since he entered. As the most powerful witness, they had to pry his mouth open. But his demeanor made it difficult for them to get any information out of him. He was good-looking and talkative, but at this moment, Lin Shentao was more silent than anyone else. Mr. Lin. The interrogator was about to take the gentle route. Lin Shentao suddenly spoke, his voice low. Do you know that person? What? The interrogator couldn't react. Lin Shentao glanced up, his eyes bloodshot. Rao Rong, what kind of person is he? The interrogator remained silent, glancing at one another. Lin Shentao didn't seem to care what others thought of him. When I first joined the team, I was always at the bottom. My hand speed wasn't fast enough and I couldn't keep up with my tactics. Many rookies weren't willing to team up with me, feeling that I was a burden. They blocked me in the changing room and forced me to leave the team. It was the captain who stood in front of me, telling me that talent was important but hard work was more important. He told them not to form small groups and ostracize other members. For the sake of the team's victory, he would stay up until 1 a.m. to study the best strategies of each member. He would often lie in front of the computer, revealing the brightest smile for every victory. When he lost, he would tell us that it didn't matter, we could try again next year. How could such a person purposely lose the National League for money? Back then, when the relationship between the team and the club was at its most tense, he took the risk of being frozen by the club to speak up for us. Many companies tried to poach him but he didn't leave because of us dragging him down. Do you know what the older members repaid him with? They forced him to leave the team, causing him to waste 2 years in esports. The club kept sending in useless relatives. If it wasn't for the captain, we would have died horribly against Supreme Alliance. The interrogator paused. Mr. Lin, I know you have a good relationship with Rao Rong, but this isn't the time to be emotional. If you can provide us with evidence, we will be able to get to the bottom of the case. I don't have any evidence. Lin Shintao's gaze was resolute. Because I don't believe Captain is that kind of person. The interrogator knew he wouldn't be able to get any results even if he continued, hence, he left the room. He shook his head at Director Huang. It's too difficult. Any progress on Smith's side? Director Huang's heart sank after listening to Lin Shintao's words. Perhaps it was because of these experiences that Rao Rong had changed, just like his father. Ever since Rao Rong came in, he only said one thing, which was that he was the one who did it. He didn't say anything else. Does that mean he confessed? Yes, it had been a smooth interrogation, but because of that, Director Huang wanted to ask more questions. But Rao Rong's attitude. Director Huang sighed. The person beside him reminded, the higher-ups want to close the case as soon as possible. The maiden's sacrifice has caused a huge impact. The media has heard that the culprit has been caught and are still waiting for the verdict. Director Huang paced back and forth, glancing at the time on his watch. Call for a press conference. Yes. Chapter 969. Director Huang lowered his gaze. When he saw the live stream, his eyes widened in shock. He snatched the phone over, a single word flashing in his eyes, Z. Smith was still looking at Rao Rong, trying to dig something out when the interrogation room door was slammed open. I think you should take a look at this. It was Director Huang. Smith frowned, his body stiffening as he bolted upright. That's impossible. The Real Z is in the city center, the IP address is in the plaza. Director Huang's reaction was much calmer than Smith's. We have to take action immediately. Smith listened to the voice in the video, the veins on his forehead popping when he heard the word TSK. It's really him. D*M it. That's why we caught the wrong person. Director Huang glanced at Rao Rong, turning towards the crime squad members who were still looking at their phones. Stop looking, hurry up and inform the professionals to lock onto Z's location. Yes. The crime squad had never been in such a mess, everyone was moving as fast as they could. Found him. Suddenly, there was news from the technician. Smith's eyes lit up, leaning over. Where is the exact location of the mall? Second floor. The moment the technician said that, he added, No, that's not right, it's the 6th floor. That's not right either, it's outdoors. Smith grabbed a handful of hair. Where exactly is it? The technician wore an earpiece, watching the screen filled with red dots, his voice trembling. That's impossible. How can there be so many IP addresses? It was harder than ascending to the heavens to identify Z among so many IPs. Smith clenched his fists. D*M it, he's using this again. Let me tell you, where I am, if you have the ability, come and find me. His arrogance was the reason why the Interpol couldn't stand him. He felt as though he was flaunting his intelligence in front of him. There were so many people in the plaza, which one was he? Director Huang panicked as well. The video was like a virus, spreading crazily on the internet. Now, there was only one person who had a solution. Director Huang whipped out his phone, dialing a familiar number. Hello, Qin Mo, the Real Z has appeared. Qin Mo received the call and was on his way to the Fu family's house. When he heard the last sentence, his fingers paused and his gaze deepened. It was like a vast ocean, making it hard to read his emotions. His handsome face was reflected in the car window. He didn't seem the least bit flustered by Z's appearance. It was as though in his heart, this day would come sooner or later. Qin Mo instructed the driver to turn around while speaking to Director Huang calmly. Give me a simple explanation of the current situation. The moment Director Huang heard that emotionless voice, he knew he was saved. He explained Z's appearance from start to finish. Chapter 970. Director Huang stilled, muttering, "Why didn't I think of that?" Chin Mo didn't listen to him. He continued, "Arrange for all the police to head to the scene. Z isn't done with his task." "Not done?" Director Huang glared at him. "What else is she trying to do? Our Jiang City's police force is going to be slapped in the face by her." Chin Mo glanced out of the car window, his gaze deep. "You caught the wrong person. She is seeking justice for Rao Rong." Director Huang paused. "It's our fault, but Rao Rong has admitted to the crime. I can't do anything about it." "Send people to the scene." Chin Mo's tone remained the same. "Move in plain clothes." Director Huang replied, "All right." He then asked, "What about you?" Chin Mo glanced at the long queue of cars in front. "I'm rushing over." "That's good, we have to catch C. You don't know how passive I am after her actions. I still have to explain to the higher-ups." Before Director Huang could finish, Chin Mo hung up. Director Huang choked. Why did he feel that Chin Mo was still the same as before? He didn't like to hear Z's bad points. In reality, Director Huang didn't know that he wasn't the one who felt passive. Instead, he was sitting in the dorm room, staring at her phone, her left hand clenching tightly around Fan Jia. Due to the commotion caused by the incident, the other roommates in the dormitory were also watching. After a girl saw the video, she couldn't help but sigh, "I always feel that Z is very handsome." "What's going on?" Fan Jia lifted her head abruptly. The girl was taken aback by her stare. For some reason, she felt a chill run down her spine. What's wrong?" "Nothing." Fan Jia held onto her phone, a sweet smile on her face. "I'm going out for some fresh air." After walking out of the room, Fan Jia's expression sank. Z was still alive? How was that possible? She hadn't seen Z's face. But she knew some information. At that time, they had clearly set up a plan to kill that person. Why was Z back? That wasn't all, she was in Jiang City. She was right beside them. D****. Fan Jia swung her arm, smashing her phone against the wall. Z, who exactly was it? It was destined to be a restless night. The Major Crimes Division mobilized all available vehicles, just to encircle an international criminal. Regarding the maiden's sacrifice, you don't have any leads, but I can provide you with a few clues. Smith, my old friend, the mastermind is a girl, a student from a university. She isn't even 23 years old and has a sweet appearance. She can't be the Rao Rong you caught. I'll show you the evidence later. No, I'll show everyone the evidence. There was once an esports player who wanted to seek justice for his father after losing his father. He took many detours, but he had never let anyone down and wouldn't fight a meaningless competition for money. Why did he come out? He wanted to tell the female student who impersonated me that your hacking skills aren't up to par. When the people in the commercial square heard the last sentence, there was an uproar. Some of the police officers at the scene had already started to intervene. Chapter 971. Look! The audience surrounding the youngster suddenly pointed at the big screen behind the youngster when they heard the high-pitched singing. At this time, the content above had changed. Rao Rong's side profile appeared on the screen along with his father, a hero who wanted to report corruption but was silenced. The photo looked old because Rao Rong was obviously different back then. He was very young. Pieces of evidence were displayed in front of everyone through the video. It was like a 2-minute film. But this movie actually existed in real life. It included the scene where Rao Rong was chased out by the club, and after his return, he didn't hesitate to offend the club in order to replace the worst player the investor had arranged. And what Rao Rong had said at the end of the competition. At this moment, it wasn't just the people in the square watching the video, there were also Rong fans holding onto their phones, suddenly feeling like crying. They had liked this person for a long time. Those who had been with him till now all knew what kind of person he was. That person was the strongest sorcerer in the esports scene, one of the 3 pillars along with Almighty Shao and Almighty Qin. He wouldn't play any sports match that went against his own conscience for money. He wouldn't really lose his humanity. There was too much unfairness when it came to that person. It would indeed cause a person to be twisted. Perhaps it was because he had such a father. That was why he could survive in the cracks. But at the same time, someone had let down his youth. At his peak, his family had been ruined and he had been in such a state for over a year. He was someone who loved esports so much. Do you still remember the youngster who had stood in front of his teammates when he first debuted, wearing his uniform and smiling? That scene had been in the past for too long. For a long time, why didn't they see the almost extinguished light in that person's eyes when he appeared again? What exactly did he go through to become the complete opposite of what he had been in the past? He had been maliciously suspected, expelled by the club, betrayed by his teammates and robbed of his glory. However, even so, in the end, he hadn't done anything that went against his conscience. He had wanted to redress his father's grievances, going against the organization, but he hadn't executed the organization's orders. It was because he had told himself that he would only punish those who deserved to be punished and not the innocent. In the face of some pointed evidence, he couldn't deny it, because if he did, his father would be wronged for life. When everyone saw the final scene, not only the ordinary people, but even the members of the key case investigation unit who were still on duty stopped in their tracks, their eyes red. Rao Rong's father had brought them along. President Qin. Not far from the commercial square, a Land Rover was still queuing up to enter the parking lot. The driver looked at the screen in the distance and couldn't help but turn to look at his young master. Qin Mo's eyes were also on the words on the screen and the old photos. Then, he pushed open the car door, held the metal bar in front of him with one hand, and jumped over. His black trench coat drew an arc in the wind. The driver opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. After all, the young master's appearance just now was really handsome, very different from his usual self. Just as everyone was looking up at the big screen, Qin Mo walked into the crowd, holding his phone as he dialed Director Huang's number. There's no need to search inside, Z is outside. Director Huang, who had already entered the mall, was confused. Outside? How do you type on a computer outside? You have to ask Z, Qin Mo replied faintly. Qin Mo's voice was calm. The view isn't as good in the mall as it is outside. Also, we can see the police's movements from here. Get our men out and move quickly because Z is already wrapping things up. Director Huang widened his eyes. Wrapping things up? The video on the screen is still playing, how can it be wrapping things up? Z's network attack can be delayed. Qin Mo walked through the crowd, his eyes sweeping past the people that walked past him. Then, he headed towards the fountain. You can ask Smith about this. Director Huang pressed his throbbing head. Smith has already gone crazy. Is that so? Z slapped him in the face. This method is indeed maddening, the higher-ups should have taken action. Do you still have Rao Rong's father's file? I want to take a look. Qin Mo's gaze was as deep as the night, walking as though he was searching for someone. Director Huang fell into a rare silence. It's a little difficult, it has been more than a year and it will take some effort to present some evidence. But for his case, the difficulty lies in the fact that the person in charge of his sentence and the file management has already retired. Some of the information has also been lost, making it difficult to reconstruct the situation. Which means someone has tampered with the file. Qin Mo's voice sank. Then check who he wanted to report back then. The information has been lost and there must be an internal problem. At this point, Director Huang understood that the person they were looking for was most likely someone with a high position and authority. As for how high this person's authority was, Director Huang glanced up at the screen. To be able to bury a grievance for such a long time without even seeing the light of day, it had to be someone in charge. Director Huang's heart couldn't help but tremble. If it wasn't for Z's video, the grievance would never have been known. Z, the evil hacker, had chosen to use such a method to make a comeback. Was it to let everyone know the truth? Director Huang's body trembled. When he looked at the screen, his expression changed. This was Z's intention. In that moment, Director Huang seemed to understand why Qin Mo had never believed Z was the culprit from the start. Even if their modus operandi was very similar, even the way they acted was 90% similar. But in terms of intention, it was worlds apart. Z was using a hacker's method to do the same thing. To cry out for justice. To let the truth be known and to return justice to the victim. Even so, Director Huang didn't believe their path was the same. Because they had to consider more. That was right, someone like Z would become the ideal hero in everyone's heart. But to maintain peace, they had to rely on the strict policemen who were constantly on the move and didn't even have time to eat when they were busy. Against Z. Even Director Huang felt that it was a pity. But he still had to say that people with different beliefs couldn't make plans together. In the past, Qin Mo had deviated when it came to Z. Therefore, this sentence could not be more suitable to be used on these two people. Among all the criminals, Z was the only one who could earn Qin Mo's praise, no one else. But a criminal was a criminal after all. He believed that Qin Mo had a balance in his heart. And now, Z had appeared again. Even he didn't know how Qin Mo would deal with it. Outside the plaza, the crowd was surging. The video on the screen was still playing. Qin Mo suddenly paused, the corners of his eyes arching. Where was the singing coming from? He furrowed his brows for a moment, then followed the sound and quickly walked over. At this moment, the singing stopped. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed in that instant. At this moment, the youngster in the middle of the plaza removed her guitar from her neck, placing it behind her back. Bojio's actions were natural, just like a singer by the side of the street, packing her belongings and heading home after encountering trouble. She bent her long legs, closing the laptop on the ground. The speed was still running. There was a minute delay. To Bojio, a minute was enough. She turned, but didn't go to the motorcycle parked at the parking lot. Because she knew that if she rode the motorcycle now, it would be a signal to the police that she was there. She carried the guitar and walked into the crowd. Bojio was still wearing a black mask. Even though the police had moved from the inside to the outside of the mall, there were two policemen who brushed past her. They didn't notice that the person they were looking for had walked past them, heading towards the crowd. Bojio didn't walk quickly because most of the people around her were still immersed in the video. Their emotions and walking were heavy. At this moment, it wasn't a good thing to walk quickly. Some of the girls watched as the youngster, who had mesmerized them, walked with them, their hearts beating faster. They hadn't expected the youngster to walk in the same direction. They wanted to ask him where he was going and if it was on the way. Just as the girls' faces turned darker, the youngster suddenly glanced up. The young man suddenly looked up and saw a tall and straight figure standing in the crowd. It was as if he was a god waiting for a rabbit to come to him. Bojio's fingers stilled, her pupils trembling. She started to analyze the situation. There was still a distance to walk from here to there. But she couldn't just turn around and leave, because that would only make the Almighty notice her at first glance. Hence, she could only face him head-on. This situation was similar to the first time they had met at the Fifth Avenue. The difference was that Bojio already knew how formidable her opponent was. She had seen the Almighty, but he hadn't seen her. Even if he had seen her, she had disguised herself. But Bojio wasn't sure if her disguise would work in front of the Almighty. Bojio watched as the distance between them shortened. Her left hand, which was in her pocket, clenched tightly. 90 meters. 80 meters. 70 meters. 60 meters, Bojio counted the numbers in her mind. There were 2 times when the Almighty's gaze swept over her. Her heart didn't seem to belong to her, beating rapidly. She had to think of a way. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be recognized. Chapter 972. Hoshino, who was as gentle as jade, reached out to press down on his earpiece. I'm here. Create a small commotion to divert Qin Mo's attention. When Bojo spoke, she tilted her head. Her voice was so soft that no one around her could hear what she was saying. Chinamo. Hoshino adjusted his position, catching sight of the tall and aloof figure. His fingers paused. Okay. The moment Hoshino said okay, Bojo and Chinamo were only 20 meters apart. If it wasn't for the person in between, it would have been 20 meters. If it wasn't for the person in between, the Almighty would have recognized her. The Almighty would have recognized her long ago. Even the ticket seller at the cinema hadn't been able to escape the Almighty's sharp observation. This time, even Bojo wasn't sure how high her chances of escaping were. But wouldn't it be more exciting this way? The youngster curled her lips into a smile. Listening to the discussion about her behind her, she suddenly paused and turned her head back. The black mask covered most of her face, but her voice was gentle and a little low. You guys seem to like the song I sang just now. The girl's heart started racing. They looked at the youngster's beautiful eyes, feeling as though they were being sucked in. What was this? She was suddenly being hit on by a pretty boy. And it was the pretty boy they had been trying to get his contact details. MMH? Why aren't you speaking? Bojo tilted her body. Even her shoulders were a little low. After all, with her height, she had to lower herself if she wanted to listen to a normal girl's words. The young man's shoulders were lowered, as though he was listening to what she had to say. The scent of the young man wafted towards her, and a pair of deep eyes stared at her. He was so handsome that it made her breath quicken. Any girl would feel their heart racing when they were stared at like that. The girl who was being hit on felt a little dizzy, her cheeks flushed. MMH, I like it. I'm planning to sing at the next intersection, you can follow me if you like. The youngster's gaze was so sincere, her aura gentle and gentle. It was hard to resist. Follow, you have to follow. He's asking me out, he's definitely asking me out. The girl smiled happily. Bojo maintained their intimate position. There were still 5 meters left. At this moment, Chinmo's gaze landed on him. Not far away, a loud and clear sound suddenly rang out. Z. Where's Z? No one knew who said it, because it came from the crowd. But it was such a sound. This attracted the attention of all the police. In addition, there was a person who was flying through the crowd. His speed was so fast that the people on the other side immediately moved. Even Chinmo's figure shifted for a moment. But it was only for an instant. As soon as he took a step forward, he immediately retracted his leg. Those eyes were very deep. Don't go over. He spoke to Director Huang through the Bluetooth earpiece. But it was too late. Once they took action, there was no turning back. This was the norm when carrying out a mission. In addition, there were so many people in the commercial square. Even if an order was given, it would be very difficult to return to its original position. However, this also showed that the person was very close to him. Sun Tzu's Art of War. A diversion. Chinmo's handsome side profile was more dignified than ever. The corners of his lips lifted slightly, his eyes sweeping across everyone around him. Chinmo's smile made Bojo feel danger. Even after such a huge commotion, the Almighty still hadn't left. The immense pressure was similar to the time she had been in the Fifth Avenue. She had avoided the police easily, but not this person. Her wig had been removed and she had been forced to fight. Today, she didn't want to fight. Because if she fought, she would definitely lose her position. Losing her position meant that her identity would be lost. Fortunately, she was prepared. She was prepared to prevent the Almighty from falling for her trap. To be honest, everyone who played hero had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Under normal circumstances, the culprit would appear. Wouldn't an ordinary person move? The Almighty stood there without moving, as though he was waiting for her to come to him. Bojo arched a brow. Just as she was about to meet the Almighty, she suddenly turned and asked the girl beside her, "What's going on?" They seemed to be arresting someone. The girl only had eyes for the youngster. Bojo laughed lightly, her tone natural. Do you want to take a look? I don't think so. Will it be dangerous? After all, the commotion was huge. She wasn't sure what would happen. Were all boys curious? The girl tilted her head towards the youngster wearing a black mask. All right then. Bo-jio sounded helpless. She raised her left hand and pressed onto the backpack on the girl's back. Her voice was low and warm. It's a little heavy, can I help you? It's fine, it's fine. The girl blushed. You can just stand beside me, why do you need to carry the backpack? Bo-jio laughed softly. I really don't know what to do with you. That pampering tone. Someone was drunk. Some people frowned slightly when they saw this scene. The latter was Chin Mo. The moment he locked onto the youngster, he almost suspected that he was the person he was especially familiar with. However, their posture was too intimate, as if they were a couple who had just started dating. Z wouldn't bring a girl with him. Besides, the intimacy wasn't fake. It shouldn't be. There wasn't any time for Chin Mo to confirm anything. Amidst the crowd, the couple had already walked past him. Chin Mo glanced back, suspicion still lingering in his eyes. Walking in front, Bo-jio could feel the Almighty's burning gaze behind her. It was as though he could see right through her. Fortunately, the girl reacted at this time. She blushed and said, "Can we always be together later?" Bo-jio felt as though every girl was her angel. Let me take a look, if it's possible. It was this last interaction that caused Chin Mo to shift his gaze away from the youngster's back, towards the other person. In reality, Bo-jio didn't know that it was her back view that made Chin Mo even more suspicious. Fortunately, Bo-jio had prepared beforehand. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to escape this time. The girl was the key. Bo-jio smiled. Successfully escaping from the Almighty was a great achievement for her. The girl watched from the side and couldn't help murmuring, "He's really handsome." It was also these 4 words that were faintly floating in the air, and the message within them was captured by others. Chin Mo, who had shifted his gaze away, suddenly turned his head back. His dark eyes emitted the fiercest glint. Actually, Chin Mo wasn't the only one who noticed the problem. Even Bo-jio knew that there was something wrong with the 4 words. Which couple would use such a tone to compliment each other's handsomeness? *T flashed across Bo-jio's mind. She was one step faster than Chin Mo. Before the girl could react, Bo-jio heard the youngster apologize. He heard the young man say, "Sorry." Then, she turned around. The youngster's black bangs scattered over her forehead. Her skin, which was not covered by the mask, was fair and translucent, as though there was no color in it. Her slightly pursed lips carried a trace of stubbornness, as though someone was about to recognize her, and she felt that this game was not that fun. The next second, she was pushed out by the youngster, her words echoing, "If I had a choice, I wouldn't want him to carry you." MMH? Before the girl could react, she was pushed into the arms of another person. The smell of peppermint tobacco made the girl pause for a moment. That person. The girl lifted her head for a moment, her attention instantly captured by the beautiful curve of his chin. Chin Mo furrowed his brows heavily. He moved her away and ran towards the youngster. Both their figures and skills were very beautiful and handsome. As they shuttled through the crowd, it was as if they were filming an American blockbuster. Bo-jio moved swiftly while observing her surroundings. She arched a brow slightly as she glanced at the figure in front of her. She took large strides forward, using the momentum from her body. With 2 loud thuds, under everyone's watchful eyes, the youngster leaped over the car and landed on the roof. *CK, he's so handsome. This can't be a movie, right? Qinggong. It wasn't any Qinggong, it was ninja skills. As the young master of the hacker world, if she didn't have such skills, she wouldn't be able to make a living. But even so, when those girls saw this scene, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The youngster standing on the roof was extremely eye-catching. She didn't forget to toss her guitar to the side when she did this. She successfully became a stumbling block for the person chasing after her. If it had been anyone else, they might have fallen. But the person chasing after her wasn't anyone else, it was Chin-mo. With a beautiful turn, he bent his long legs slightly and heard a loud thud. The guitar was kicked into pieces in midair. Bo-jio heard the sound but didn't even turn her head. Amidst everyone's exclamations, the young man took a step back and leaped from one roof to another like a bolt of lightning. Then, he jumped out of the car. Taking advantage of the gap between the red lights, he rolled on the ground, got up, and dashed toward the opposite side of the road. Some people from the Key Case Investigation Unit noticed the commotion. But it was useless. The youngster wasn't just skilled. When this person moved, his speed was especially fast. Moreover, he was in the middle of the road. How were they going to catch him if he could use such a method? They could only rely on young Master Chin. That was what the crime squad members were thinking. He was too far away and they couldn't shoot him. At the start of the operation, young Master Chin had instructed them not to use guns. But even if they had guns, they wouldn't be able to aim. The youngster's mobility was too strong. She didn't leave the crowd. It wasn't easy for them to shoot. It was the same even when she barged into the crowd. The crowd had assumed that the youngster would leave just like that. But what they didn't expect was that there was another figure following closely behind. His slender legs and his black windbreaker fluttered as he moved, making everyone feel that they must have come to the wrong place. To be honest, both of them were equally skilled and fast. The only difference was the length of their legs. Chin-mo's legs were longer than Bo-jio's and the Almighty was good at predicting her escape route. The moment she moved, the Almighty would know where she would land. Hence, the distance between them narrowed. Just as she was about to be caught, Bo-jio turned and threw something behind her. Swoosh! It was a pack of cigarettes. As Chin-mo dodged, he asked faintly, "Don't you have anything else to throw?" Bo-jio didn't reply. Any turn would give the other party a chance to catch her. The Almighty's height and long legs gave him a natural advantage. Bo-jio ran, kicking the wall beside her. Using the recoil, she sped up and flipped over the railing in front of her. Still not giving up? Chin-mo arched a brow, rushing over. He didn't need to kick the wall to catch up to the cold figure. The difference in leg length was indeed useful at a crucial moment. Bo-jio didn't have anything else to throw other than the USB lighter in her pocket. But if she threw it out, her identity would definitely be exposed. Right at this moment, Chin-mo narrowed his eyes. He estimated the distance and reached out with his left hand, grabbing onto the youngster's shirt. Bo-jio paused. Without hesitation, she flipped in the air, using the recoil to temporarily escape the fate of being dragged back. But that wasn't the end. Chin-mo was already close to her. This meant that she would either win or be caught. The moment she thought about it, she would be met with shock or disgust. Bo-jio seemed to have an endless amount of energy. Her relationship with the Almighty was strained. If she was caught, everything would be over. With that thought in mind, Bo-jio lifted her leg and kicked towards Chin-mo. The sharp wind seemed to be able to split everything in half. Chin-mo took a step back, narrowing his eyes. He reached out once more, but this time, he didn't grab her arm like he had done at the Fifth Avenue. Instead, he went for the black mask on the youngster's face. Bo-jio jolted. She used her left hand to block, turning beautifully. Even though the mask was caught, Chin-mo couldn't see her face. But without the mask, she wouldn't be able to face the Almighty. Even if she made some adjustments, the Almighty would definitely recognize her. It was too difficult. Bo-jio jumped again, but this time, her luck wasn't as good. In order to avoid the youngster in front of her, she tilted slightly. It was this distance that allowed Chin-mo to grab onto her shirt again. Chapter 973. In the nick of time. A black motorcycle sped by the side of the street. The person on top was wearing a helmet. His eyes were deep and he had a gentle aura. If it wasn't Hoshino, who else could it be? He held on to the handlebars with one hand, turning his body and extending his hand in her direction. Swoosh! The youngster moved in midair, grabbing onto the person's hand. With a flip of her long legs, she climbed onto the motorcycle. His speed was very fast, and his movements were as graceful as flowing water. The drivers in the cars parked by the roadside were dumbfounded. Even if the crime squad reacted, it wouldn't be of any use. The heavy-duty motorcycle, be it the size, appearance, or the sleek design, was a testament to its speed. It was like a wild leopard charging out, not easy to block. Shin Mo stood tall and straight, his eyes looking at the tomahawk gradually disappearing into the traffic, as if he had been abandoned by someone. He slowly clenched the black mask in his palm, and the aura that emanated from his back was extremely cold. Director Huang stood opposite him. The moment he saw the person escaping, his breathing became heavy. When he caught sight of the black mask in Shin Mo's hands, his eyes widened. You removed Z's mask? Did you get a good look at his face? Do you need me to contact a technician to draw out Z's facial features based on your memory? I didn't see him. Shin Mo glanced up, replying calmly. Director Huang froze on the spot. Young Master Qin's gaze sent chills down his spine no matter how he looked at it. Cough. Director Huang started to reflect. We didn't think things through, we didn't expect this to happen. Z is indeed a thorough person. He gave the thieves nearby a sum of money and instructed them to flee upon receiving orders. I've already questioned the one we caught. He doesn't know Z's face, he only gave a rough description of his height and clothing. The person you were chasing just now is him, the rest of the clues are pitiful. Shin Mo glanced at him. Start with the motorcycle. Director Huang was confused, they wouldn't be able to find anything from the license plate. It's a limited edition tomahawk, there aren't many in the country, check the owner. Shin Mo's voice was calm. Before Director Huang could reply, his phone rang. The call was from the higher-ups. The tone of the call was not particularly good and carried too much emotion. Have you caught him? The culprit is skilled, we have to continue the investigation. Director Huang wiped his sweat as he spoke. His tone turned stern. You should be aware of the impact of this matter. It was such a public occasion and the mall was hacked, but the crime squad couldn't do anything about it. Director Huang, isn't it time for you to reflect on the crime squad's capabilities? We need to give the people an explanation, and even more so, we need to give an explanation to those who have been affected by this incident. Director Huang paused before replying, I understand. I don't need to say anything else. Even if what Z did wasn't a heinous crime, there are some problems that need to be solved in a proper way. What would the public say if a hacker found out about the unjust case from years ago and the police knew nothing about it? What will the higher-ups think? Director Huang inhaled deeply. Secretary Liang, I understand what you're trying to say. I don't really care about what the higher-ups think, but there are some unjust cases that should be uncovered by our own people, otherwise, it would be too much of a slap in the face. Secretary Liang frowned, but before he could speak, Director Huang added, there are still some loose ends to be done. Director Huang added, there are still some loose ends to be done. I don't think the most important thing now is to find Z. Instead, we should help an old comrade reverse the verdict and give his son an explanation. If it's really as the video says, that Rao Rong hasn't been able to seek redress for the past year, there must be an internal problem. Secretary Liang paused for a moment before saying, I agree with you on this point. I still have a meeting to attend, and it will be about today's incident. So, Old Huang, any evidence on your side is especially important. I've already submitted a proposal to deal with this organization. We will work with the United Nations Interpol, and the military will also send people over. They should be in Jiang City by now, and they will work together with the Key Case Investigation Unit. That's all for now. Director Huang listened to the other end of the call. He glanced over at the commercial plaza, the screen had switched back to the advertisement. It was as though the video hadn't existed. But it wasn't non-existent. The video had already spread online. With such a huge influence, it meant that Rao Rong's father's case had to be retried. And this time, no one dared to obstruct the retrial. With that in mind, Director Huang felt comforted. He finally understood what it meant to borrow the power of the masses. With the supervision of the masses, some matters would be sped up. But at the same time, he had witnessed Zi's true terror. Fortunately, she had only exposed the truth and hadn't used her power for anything else. But did she come to China because someone had impersonated her? Director Huang couldn't help but ask Qin Mo. Qin Mo retracted his gaze, stuffed his left hand that was holding the black mask into his pocket, his voice indifferent. Perhaps. What did he mean by perhaps? Director Huang wanted to continue, but Qin Mo boarded the Land Rover. Qin Mo boarded the Land Rover parked by the roadside. Before he closed the door, he added, "The outcome of Rao Rong's father's case is crucial. Rao Rong will only tell the crime squad after finding the person who framed his father." Director Huang frowned. Shouldn't he cooperate with the investigation now? He won't. Qin Mo glanced at Director Huang, his expression calm. Because he doesn't trust the police. Director Huang shook his head. How did he become like this? After being hurt so many times, a person has to change. Qin Mo arched a brow, as though he was stating a fact. Around that year, he believed but realized he was hurt even more. If it wasn't out of hatred, no one would be foolish enough to get involved with a criminal. Director Huang clenched his teeth. This matter was more troublesome than he had expected. If they didn't investigate further, Rao Rong would probably hate them even more. It wasn't going to be easy. There's one more thing. Qin Mo glanced up, a glint lingering in his eyes. There are some things he didn't say because he wanted to say it during the trial. He was worried that if he said it now, the person who framed his father would have a way to avoid it. You should think about who in the internal department would have that ability. Director Huang froze. He had thought about the conditions Qin Mo had mentioned. It seemed like it was time to take this issue seriously. The Land Rover drove off. The chauffeur sat in the front and wanted to drive straight back to the courtyard. But he heard his young master's voice from behind. Turn left. Turn left? Where was he going? The chauffeur didn't dare to ask. Qin Mo sat in the back seat, glancing at the black mask in his hands. He whipped out his phone and dialed a number. Chen Xiaodong heard the sound in the living room and immediately picked up the phone. Hello, Fu family. Chen Xiaodong? Qin Mo's voice was faint. Chen Xiaodong felt his head go numb. Almighty Qin, it's me. Qin Mo's tone didn't change. Get your young master to the phone. Chen Xiaodong exclaimed. My young master isn't home, he moved to the school. Young Master Qin, why don't you call him? School? Inexplicably, Qin Mo felt as though he had heard wrongly. However, his smart judgment told him that he hadn't heard wrongly. His voice suddenly turned cold. Which school? Chen Xiaodong thought it couldn't be. What kind of world was Almighty Qin living in? He didn't even know about school. He moved to the male dormitory and only comes back on Saturdays. It would have been better if Chen Xiaodong hadn't explained. Qin Mo wouldn't have such a strong image. The moment he explained, his gaze deepened. He tightened the mask in his hands and knocked on the car door. The sound didn't just startle the chauffeur, it also confused Chen Xiaodong. What was going on? The chauffeur sat in the front, watching his young master's cold and handsome face. Someone was going to be in trouble today. Indeed, someone was going to be in trouble. Fan Jia had never expected things to turn out this way. Z, the person who should have died a long time ago. How could she ruin her plans to such an extent? She had to make preparations to retreat. But she wasn't willing to leave just like that. Perhaps, there was another way. Fan Jia narrowed her eyes, trying to maximize the benefits she and her partner could get. As long as someone warned Rao Rong, he wouldn't say anything. Come to think of it, even if she didn't warn him, with Rao Rong's intelligence, he wouldn't go all out. Rao Rong didn't know who killed his father. She was the only one in the know. If she exposed it, it would be a secret forever. There was no information, no files, even the judge had retired. The case had been in the past for so long, it wasn't easy to investigate. Besides, a truly powerful person wouldn't kill someone personally. Of course, they would do it from a higher position. Unless there was a thorough investigation, it wouldn't be easy to find out who the culprit was. Rao Rong was well aware of this matter. Before the culprit surfaced, he wouldn't say much. Besides, even if Rao Rong leaked her information, it wouldn't be the same. She wasn't the same as when she had met him. It was just that she had lost some information. However, some information was indeed fatal to her. Hence, she had to make some preparations. Fan Jia clenched her fists. The main point was the information released by the person who was supposed to be dead. How did he know which school she was in, and how did he manage to deduce her current identity? Her brother was right. If she wanted to get what she wanted, she had to get rid of Z first. Previously, she had used Qin Mo. Even though it hadn't been successful, it had been effective. But this time, since Qin Mo had lost a portion of his memory, didn't that mean that the chances of success would be much higher? Besides, those people didn't want Qin Mo to have any contact with Z. Everyone hoped that he could think rationally and without any emotions, right? In reality, Fan Jia still couldn't understand why he treated Z differently. However, this difference made her want him even more. Fan Jia. Fan Jia. The voice beside her snapped Fan Jia back to her senses. What is it? We are going to meet at the school gates, do you want to come? Sure, wait for me to go get something. At times like this, she had to act as she usually did. Even though there was a temporary setback and the plan had to be delayed, it didn't mean she didn't have a chance of winning. Fan Jia pushed the door open and entered the dormitory. She dialed a number. Rao Rong has betrayed us, either the crime squad won't be able to find anything or he will shut his mouth forever. It will be easier for you to take action. The person on the other end inhaled deeply. Are you crazy? Why are you taking such a risk? Do you know how strict the investigation is? No matter how strict the investigation is, as long as there is no evidence, you won't be able to get a verdict even if you are suspected, right? Fan Jia narrowed her eyes. Besides, it was that person's idea to make Rao Rong's father disappear. With him protecting you, what are you afraid of? Do you know when he will stop protecting you? Even if you don't do anything and wait for the internal investigation, that person will have no choice but to separate from you in order to protect himself. Back then, the cleanup was done so cleanly, even if there is any information left, it won't be found out. You can either attack or wait for your death. Think about it carefully. A middle-aged man in uniform stood in the corridor, his forehead covered in a layer of sweat. Ever since he had seen the video, he had a feeling. He couldn't hold on any longer. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and enter the meeting. Yes, I'm coming. The man looked at the back of the person in front of him, and the girl's words kept echoing in his mind. She was right. Either he caused a commotion, or he would be cut off. Instead of being passive, he might as well take the initiative now. It was a huge meeting with the leader in charge. The entire process was carried out in secret. There was a change in the weather. The wind blew against the youngster's clothes, allowing her to relax slightly. She smiled. That was close. Hoshino did not comment. After all, every time the youth did something, it was to a certain extent. When was he not arrogant and bold? But Qin Mo was indeed the toughest opponent they had ever met. Drop me off at the front, I'll take the train back, it's one stop away. Just then, her phone rang, the caller ID from the Fu family's house. Bojo arched a brow. Hello? Young master, it's me. Chen Xiaodong seemed to have been triggered by something, his voice breaking. Bojo replied, MMH, I know it's you, why? Young Master Chin called just now. He wanted you to answer the phone. I told him you weren't home, you went to stay in school, but he seemed angry. I don't know why. Chapter 974. Young Master, isn't it weird? If young Master Chin wants to look for you, he can just call your phone. Why did he call my house? When I picked up the call, my scalp went numb. Even though young Master Chin's voice sounds nice, it's still scary. As a butler, Chen Xiaodong was a little naggy. But it was his nagging that made Bojio frown. Xiaodong. MMH? Chen Xiaodong didn't understand why his young master was calling him that. Bojio's gaze dimmed. I have something to do, I'll hang up first. If young Master Chin calls again, tell him I'm in school. That's what I said, Before Chen Xiaodong could finish his sentence, the busy tone came from the other end. Bojio flipped over. She held her backpack with one hand and pulled open her jacket with the other. She tossed it into the bin at the side. Her movements were swift. Hoshino immediately realized something. Did something happen? Chin Mo is suspecting me. Bojio paused. He suspects that I'm the one in the plaza. Hoshino's gaze stilled. Do you want to leave? Bojio glanced up and shook her head, her voice low. The National League hasn't started yet, I'll leave after Supreme Alliance wins. Hoshino watched the youngster. After a long moment, he said, I'll arrange a special passage to prevent any difficulties. Bojio swiftly changed her appearance, leaving only her hair. She couldn't do it here, she had to return to the dormitory and create an alibi. There was one more thing she had to do, she had to reach school before the Almighty. Bojio glanced at the main road, turning towards Hoshino. Head from the east, leave the car at an area with many stolen cars and hail a cab back. All right. Hoshino's aura didn't change, his long legs supporting the left side of the motorcycle. Be careful, if we're discovered, we'll head back to Fifth Avenue. Bojio nodded, rushing into the subway station. She glanced down at the time on her wrist, thankful that it was a traffic jam. If not, they wouldn't have been able to shake off the crime squad car so easily. But even so, there were still cameras on the road. The police might not have the video of them passing through the alleys, but as long as they appeared on the main road, there would be clues. Even if these clues were not found now, in less than half a day's time, all the major checkpoints would be checking the vehicles. Therefore, she and Hoshino had to seize the time and act separately. Bojio had already thought about this. The only thing she didn't expect was the phone call from the Almighty. Just like what Chen Xiaodong said, if the Almighty was really looking for her, he could have just called her or sent her a WeChat message. But the Almighty called the Fu family directly. He wasn't looking for her. He wanted to see if she was at home and if she had an alibi. Bojio gripped the handrail in the train, her eyes bright. As expected, it was never easy to shake off the Almighty's pursuit. Her time was running out. Bojio glanced down at her wrist. Once the train reached the station, she took large strides towards the crowd. Her speed was very fast. Her hair was still black, which meant that she had to wash off the paint on it, in order to prevent being caught by the Almighty in school. Bojio chose to enter from the back door. This meant that she had to climb over the wall. The back door of number 1 middle school was next to number 2 middle school. Bojio tugged her collar with one hand and was about to move. Before the thorn-head youngster could walk over, he said, F***CK, it's already night time. Expert, why are you climbing over the wall? Aren't you afraid of being caught by the headmaster? Bojio paused, turning to look at a certain Shinibu. Hey, your hair is dyed black. When I saw your back, my instincts told me it was you. I never expected it to be you. Bojio held her forehead, sighing deeply. She scanned the things in his hands and pulled him over. You're wasting my time, do you know that? Bring the bowl of noodles over. Bowl of noodles? No, I was busy with my date and didn't have a proper meal. The canteen doesn't even cook. This is my only ration and I even snatched it from my little brother. Bojo reached out. Give it to me. F***ck, you're robbing, do you understand? Is it a trend for good students to rob bad students? Bojo didn't care what he was yelling at the back, grabbing his lunchbox. She used one hand to support herself against the tree trunk and took large strides, climbing up the wall. She stood there and jumped down. Her movements were fast and suave. The boss of number 2 middle school, who had wanted to snatch his bowl of noodles back, hesitated. In the end, he decided to buy another bowl since his skills weren't as good as the other parties. If he climbed over the wall and lost, it would be embarrassing. He was someone with a girlfriend now, he had to take care of his image. Bojo walked quickly, especially when night fell. She was like a silent shadow. When she appeared in the dormitory, the 2 roommates who had skipped the night revision session and were playing poker were shocked. Boss, why are you so quiet when you walk? Your hair. Bojo glanced at them and said, if Almighty Chin asks later, tell him I've been in the dormitory the whole time and never left, understand? They didn't really understand. The 2 people who skipped class were confused, but looking at the young man's cold and ruthless face, no one dared to object. After all, the school hunk had won their respect from the moment he entered their dormitory. Even if they were suspicious that Almighty Chin's visit to their boss was just a fantasy, they couldn't expose it, right? Once she entered the dormitory, Bojo turned on the hot water and soaked the instant noodles before entering the bathroom. Number 1 middle school was indeed the best high school in Jiang City. Even the dormitory was a 5-star one with a shower area. Bojo glanced at herself in the mirror. She lowered her head and aimed it at the faucet of the sink, not caring if it was cold water or not. The white foam from the shampoo swept across the corner of her eyes, the dark color fading away slowly, returning to its original silver color. Outside the school, Jiang Zhua had rushed to the entrance after receiving the call. When he saw Qin Mo's cold aura, he couldn't help but ask curiously, young Master Fu just wants to stay in the dormitory and experience group life. Why are you so angry? Qin Mo didn't reply, walking into the school entrance. The male dormitory wasn't far away. Jiang Zhua laughed mischievously. It can't be, you still haven't settled that person. Qin Mo turned and glanced at Jiang Zhua, his tone calm. You still haven't settled Shui Yao Yao and she seems to be rejecting you. Jiang Zhua's fingers stilled and he laughed. Is that the same? You should know that I'm not as serious as you. I'm not bent by a single person, but what exactly is your little spade thinking? Does he want to stay in the dormitory and study hard? It can't be. We're here, this is the dormitory, I just found it for you. Qin Mo didn't say another word as he walked in. Even though number 1 middle school's facilities were good, it was a famous school with a long history. Hence, there weren't any elevators in the dormitory, which meant they had to walk up the stairs. The moment Qin Mo walked in, he attracted many people's attention. Moreover, Jiang Zhua was following behind him. The appearance of the 2 male almighties of number 1 middle school made everyone excited. The boys' world was that simple. To them, Qin Mo was the strongest boss in the history of number 1 middle school. They could see each other usually. After all, it was rare for Qin Feng to return to the school for a visit. But for him to appear in the male dormitory, it was a miracle among miracles. There were already many people taking out their phones to take pictures. Some of Qin Mo's fans were even more passionate, shouting from behind, Almighty Qin, you have to win the National League. Qin Mo was already on the 2nd floor, it was hard for him to react. Jiang Zhua chuckled. You seem more popular than before, Supreme Alliance is really popular. How does it feel to be liked by so many boys? I don't feel anything. Qin Mo glanced at him, gesturing for him to shut up. Wait for me downstairs, I have something to discuss with that guy. Jiang Zhua arched a brow, smiling. You need someone to guard the door. I'll guard the door for you and help you clear the area. Up to you. Chin Mo went up to the third floor and saw a group of half-naked high school students. They were holding a wash basin, baggy pants and a double trolley board. They were probably washing their clothes in the study room. Chin Mo frowned at their attire because one of them was running around in his underwear. Chin Mo's gaze turned colder at the thought of a certain someone living in such an environment. However, whether that guy really lived here or if it was just a disguise was yet to be verified. Along the way, they stepped on the rubbish on the ground. The smell spreading was definitely not pleasant. Jiang Zuo's faint smile finally broke. He reached out to press his nose and mouth. As for the boys on both sides of the corridor, when they saw the two of them, they seemed to be petrified and just stood there in a daze. There was only one thought in their minds, F***ck, why did Almighty Qin come to such a state? The one in his underwear was afraid of hurting Almighty Qin's eyes, so he hid behind the wall, covering his lower body with both hands, wishing that he was transparent. Humans were like this. If a bunch of guys were shirtless and didn't wear pants, no one would think much of it. But suddenly, an extremely clean person came in, and that person was the idol of their male god, so their faces were a little hot. Four-eyed, who was standing at the door with his lunchbox in hand, was also blushing. Who could explain to him what was going on? Why did Almighty Qin stop in front of their dormitory, stuffing one hand into his pocket and arching a brow at him? Even though he didn't want to admit it, as a man, their heights weren't just a little different. Knock on the door. Qin Mo's voice had always been calm, but it always had a natural aura that made people who heard it want to execute it uncontrollably. Four-eyed turned and knocked on the door silently. Honestly, no one in the dormitory could hear him knocking on the door. Four-eyed felt that young Master Qin's presence made it harder for him to enter the room. Usually, he would just kick the door open. That was the correct way to enter the dormitory. He was so refined, but he really didn't. Jiang Zuo could ease the atmosphere. Isn't it night self-study session? There are many people back. It hasn't been very strict recently. Boys, after all. Four-eyed chuckled, his eyes drifting over to Almighty Qin's cold and indifferent side profile. Someone should have opened the door. It was fine if he skipped class, but didn't he know how to come out and get his food? Since Qin Mo and Jiang Zuo were standing there at the same time, room 419 became the focus of attention in the corridor. They had a premonition that the dormitory was going to be popular. First, the school hunk moved in, and now, young Master Qin. In the past, they wouldn't have imagined this. The four-eyed man didn't feel much pressure. Under the piercing glare, he took a deep breath and knocked on the wooden door 3 times. F***ck, who is it? I'm still playing games. It should be four-eyed. Our food is definitely here. Hey, that's good. The man opened the door as he spoke. You really are four-eyed. Come, let me see what you bought. What 2 words? The man couldn't finish his sentence. This. What was with Almighty Qin and young Master Jiang beside him? All of a sudden, the man was reminded of his new boss's words. He turned his head and opened his mouth. He wanted to ask his new boss to come out of the bathroom, but unexpectedly, the youngster was already sitting in front of the wooden table. His hair seemed to have just been washed as it was still dripping water. His back was facing him, his head lowered as he fiddled with a bowl of instant noodles, seemingly waiting for it to be cooked. This. When did the new boss come out? Wasn't he a little too fast when he opened the door? Qin Mo glanced up at the man who was petrified in front of him. He reached out to push him away and walked in. The man who was coming down from the top bunk almost tripped and fell when he saw this scene. When the man at the door snapped back to his senses, he called out anxiously, "Boss." When she had heard the knocking, Bojio had already guessed that it was the Almighty. She arched a brow and turned back with the plastic fork that came with the bowl of noodles. The Almighty was standing at the messy entrance of the dormitory. He was dressed in a trench coat, his long legs tall and straight. His elegance and cleanliness were a stark contrast to the surroundings. No matter what, she felt a little guilty. Chapter 975. Chin Mo watched as the youngster's silver hair dripped with water, her expression unguarded. Her gaze was as clear as ever, as though she didn't know anything. Chin Mo took a step forward. The person who almost fell from the upper bunk hurriedly retracted his hand, burrowing into the blanket. It was a pity that he had to cover his upper body in the summer. Bo Jio could feel the oppressive aura inching closer to her. She didn't know if her roommates would believe her if she told them that the Almighty was bored and wanted to play with her. "All of you, leave." This was Chin Mo's first sentence, his faint voice tinged with coldness. Although it was only 6 words, it made the backs of the other 3 people in the dormitory stiffen. They looked at each other, quickly packed up their things, and stood in the safe area. The so-called safe zone was the place beside Jiang Zhua, who had a faint smile on his face. "It seems like we've disturbed them." Jiang Zhua patted one of their shoulders. "Let's have a smoke outside." The person nodded. What else could they do? They couldn't defeat young Master Qin. Besides, young Master Qin looked like he wanted revenge. It wasn't because they didn't have a collective sense of honor. It wasn't because they didn't want to stand on their new boss's side. Even if they were to make a move, they would just be adding to young Master Qin's side. Wait a minute. Chin Mo turned, his gaze sweeping over the 3 of them. She has been here the entire time, she hasn't left. Ah. Bo Jio heard the exclamation, her heart sinking. Fortunately, Four Eyes was more reliable. He pushed his spectacles up and tried to remain calm. No, she has. Boss even showed his face in class and bought a bowl of instant noodles. Bo Jio smiled faintly. This was the perfect excuse. As expected, those who were well-educated were better at lying. As expected of the weirdest student in their dormitory. Chin Mo glanced at Four Eyes, his gaze shifting towards the other 2. That fleeting gaze made him chuckle coldly. Is that so? Yes, Almighty Qin, you don't know how hard it is to persevere at night. The thorn had finally regained his sense of existence. But it was obvious that based on Bo Jio's understanding of the Almighty, he didn't believe her. She hadn't left. Fortunately, she wasn't tricked by her teammate. Done. Jiang Zhua reached out and pulled the door handle over. He said meaningfully, "You 2 have a good chat. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Just keep the commotion down. I'll be guarding the door." Bo Jio watched Jiang Zhua's smile, which made him look like a pimp. After closing the door, the other 3 finally heaved a sigh of relief. When young Master Qin caught them and asked them questions, their hearts were in their throats. But Boss was amazing. How did he know what young Master Qin would ask them? Needless to say, their acting just now was top-notch. After admiring themselves, the 3 of them couldn't help but be curious. They asked Jiang Zhua, "Young Master Jiang, what happened between young Master Qin and our boss? Did you have a conflict?" Jiang Zhua leaned against the door, his head tilted as he lit a cigarette. He held it between his fingers and smiled. How can it be a conflict? They are discussing matters regarding tomorrow's competition, so we can't disturb them, understand? As for how to negotiate, that would depend on Chin Mo. Honestly, Jiang Zhua rarely saw Chin Mo like today. It was rare to see him exuding such a cold aura from the inside out. Hopefully, everything was fine. Jiang Zhua flicked the cigarette ash in his hand, glancing at the messy tunnel. He felt that it was better to remind Chin Mo to hurry up. If he stayed in such an environment, he would smell. But Chin Mo wasn't going to check his messages. He allowed his phone to vibrate as he stuffed a hand into his pocket. He stood in front of Bo Jio, looking down at her with an indifferent gaze. He didn't say a word, his gaze sending goosebumps down Bo Jio's back. Bo Jio's lashes fluttered. Chin Mo reached out, touching the bowl of noodles on the table. It was warm, proving that there was indeed water inside. Bo Jio glanced up, watching the fair hand in front of her, each nail trimmed neatly. But that didn't mean he was harmless. His actions proved that the Almighty was suspicious of her. For 19, did you move in because of the dorm name? Chin Mo asked coldly. Bo Jio stilled. I didn't notice the dorm number. Is that so? Chin Mo watched the youngster's face. Bo Jio revealed her tiger teeth, smiling faintly. I'm a righteous person, I wouldn't think in that direction. Including seeing so many naked men walking around. Chin Mo's gaze darkened. Bo Jio felt that she had to save herself at this moment. She caressed her nose. After seeing you, these people are like a pile of bones, I'm not interested. Chin Mo paused. Be more serious. I am. Bo Jio laughed. Brother Mo, you aren't angry with me, right? Chin Mo watched her, his gaze deep and unreadable. I can stop being angry, sing me a song. Bo Jio smiled. Sure, what song do you want to hear? The Ordinary Road, Chin Mo replied faintly. But it was the name that made Bo Jio's fingers freeze for a moment. All right, I'll search for the lyrics. Just as she lowered her head to search, Chin Mo placed his hands on both sides of her. Chin Mo placed his hands on both sides of her and lowered his body. This way, they were very close to each other, so close that their breaths could touch each other's faces. Fortunately, Jiang Zhua had brought the people from the dormitory out. Otherwise, it would be hard not to think too much if someone saw their posture. Bo Jio's heart tightened. This was undoubtedly the Almighty's interrogation method against her. Chin Mo watched her for a moment, his lips lifting into a devilish smile. Jio, do you know that a person's heart beats faster when they are lying? Bo Jio lifted her head, her face serious. I don't know if I'm lying, but when you are so close to me, my heart beats faster. Do I have to touch your chest and ask questions? Chin Mo smiled, looking warm, but Bo Jio knew it wasn't warm at all because there wasn't a hint of a smile in his eyes. The Almighty's gaze moved from her face to the ends of her hair. His left hand reached out, reaching under the hem of her top. He lifted it up and held on to her softness. Bo Jio trembled. Chapter 976. That's the inconvenience of staying in the male dormitory. I want to take a shower before they all return. Her excuse was flawless. Chin Mo laughed again. He leaned against her, and there seemed to be a coldness at the corner of his mouth. Bo Jio couldn't help but shrink back due to the strength of his fingers. However, Chin Mo was faster than her. He held the back of her head and watched as the water dripped from the youngster's silver hair landed on her delicate and fair collarbone. Chin Mo's eyes deepened and he retracted his hand. After regaining her freedom, Bo Jio wanted to stand up. Chin Mo took out a black mask from his pocket. He looked at her and asked slowly, "Do you recognize this?" Bo Jio didn't have time to reply. Chin Mo had already placed the mask on her face. Bo Jio's heart trembled. She tried her best to look natural. Bo Jio knew where the mask had come from. It was the one that had been removed by the Almighty during their fight. The black mask accentuated the youth's beautiful eyes, making them look as bright as stars. Chin Mo watched the familiar brows peeking through the black mask, his gaze deepening. His fingers caressed the edge of Bo Jio's mask, lowering his body. You really look alike. Bo Jio didn't dodge. What does it look like? Like Z. The moment he said that, her back stiffened. It wasn't because of the Almighty's words, but because of the sudden kiss. Through the mask, he landed a kiss on her lips. Through the black cotton, his breath was filled with a faint scent. That kind of kiss could easily make one's heart palpitate. It was as if all the fragments of his brain had been sucked out. He couldn't think about anything else. It's you, right? A cool breath hit her ear. His handsome face vaguely carried a hint of bewitchment. The person at the commercial square today. That sentence jolted her back to her senses. She didn't deny it directly, instead, she asked with a pair of confused eyes, what commercial plaza? Chin Mo narrowed his eyes. He stared at the face in front of him that always made him lose his rationality. His thoughts drifted. Wasn't it her? Brother Amo, why aren't you saying anything? Bojo seized the chance, asking, what commercial plaza? It's nothing. Chin Mo was wearing a trench coat. His black hair was a little messy. Coupled with his face, he looked indescribably sexy. Then, he reached out and took off his trench coat, placing it over someone's head. Bojo paused. Brother Amo, don't tell me you still don't want to see my face? Who knew that as soon as she finished her sentence? His whole body was lifted up by someone. His lower abdomen was pressed against his shoulder, and his head was hanging down. It was not a comfortable position. Bojo was about to move when she heard his cold voice. Do you want the whole school to know how I carried you out? Bojo quietened down. After all, if word of this got out, she would be the one who would be embarrassed. Just thinking about it made the rumors terrifying. For example, when she chased after the Almighty couldn't stand it anymore and planned to dispose of her like a pile of trash. If she attached a photo to prove the truth, then she would really become famous in the school. She was still a boy. Which school hunk would be carried out like this? Hence, a wise man submits to circumstances. It was better for her to be quiet. The other people in room 419 were still asking Jiang Zhua about young Master Qin when the door in front of them opened. Qin Mo walked out with a pile of people on his shoulder. The guys from room 419 glanced at each other. They didn't need to think to know who young Master Qin was carrying. It couldn't be anyone other than the school hunk. However, in their minds, their boss was already extremely skilled. How good was young Master Qin at fighting? How could he defeat their boss in just a few minutes? Moreover, he even wanted to take him away. Qin Mo seemed to have noticed their gazes. He tilted his head, his eyes meeting theirs. What is it? Nothing, nothing. One of them immediately stepped aside. Even though Bojo couldn't see her surroundings since her face was covered, she could hear their deep breaths and their voices. She knew what was going on. There must be a lot of people watching her. In the past, Bojo felt that the Almighty's habit of covering her with his jacket wasn't desirable. Now, Bojo grabbed onto the trench coat, afraid it would fall off. Jiang Zhua chuckled playfully. He turned to Qin Mo, you're really something. That works too. Qin Mo didn't reply. He carried a certain someone on his shoulder and walked out of the male dormitory under the watchful eyes of the guys. Then he stuffed Bojo into the back seat of the Land Rover. Jiang Zhua, who had been following behind him, seemed to have noticed something. His gaze landed on the figure that was smiling lightly at the boy. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes, his tone still sounding like a playboy. Leave first, I have something on. I won't disturb you from teaching your little spade a lesson. Bojo listened to Jiang Zhua's gloating tone. Her situation wasn't as good as it seemed. From the looks of it, the Almighty's suspicions towards her hadn't been dispelled. Moreover, she was staying in the male dormitory. The Almighty didn't seem happy from his tone just now. As expected. The moment the Almighty came over, he carried her and placed her on his long legs. His voice was slow and deep. Don't worry, I won't touch you now. I'll deal with you when we get home. Bojo replied. Brother Mo, you should touch me now. The driver is here. Qin Mo sniffed the scent of the youngster's hair. Everything seemed right. When there's no one around, it was too obvious what the Almighty was trying to say. Bojo felt that the interrogation would be more intense than the one in the male dormitory. Why did the Almighty have his eyes on her? She had tried to cover up every single detail. Moreover, the Almighty's suspicions had reached an unbridled stage. He called Fatty right in front of her. Help me check the surveillance cameras in number 1 middle school. See if anyone climbed over the wall today. No, you don't have to look for any suspicious people. Just look for Little Spade's video. Bojo replied sincerely, Brother Mo, I don't always climb over the wall. I still use the main entrance. Qin Mo ignored her interruption and continued to order. Send me a copy of the surveillance footage from the classroom, between 7 and 8. See if Little Spade is around. Captain, why are you investigating Little Spade all of a sudden? Bo Jiu was about to reply when Qin Mo's voice rang out again. Qin Mo's voice rose again. She always skips classes. She's so disobedient, Fatty replied before hanging up. Chapter 977. The night deepened a notch. The students of number 1 middle school had just finished their night revision. The entire school was brightly lit, especially the supper windows and small shops. There were many people queuing up. As the weather got warmer, there were more people buying ice water and Coke. Compared to when they first entered number 1 middle school, all the students were freed. The long forest was filled with people walking, and there were also some girls discussing topics and where to shop on Sunday. Shui Yaoyao had wanted to use this time to play a few games at the internet cafe. Practicing her hand speed had become a habit of hers. She hadn't expected to be stopped by a boy she usually chatted with. The boy was from the next class. He stood tall and handsome in front of Shui Yaoyao, holding a basketball in his hand. He was the type of handsome boy with a good personality. When he smiled, his canine teeth would be revealed, adding to his good looks. This type of boy was well liked in school. Hence, Shui Yaoyao hadn't expected him to stop her. Behind him were 2 of his best friends. We have a game later, do you want to watch? The boy asked. Shui Yaoyao was still holding her book, smiling as she rejected him. The boy smiled. Forget it, I'll change the question. Do you want to be my girlfriend? Shui Yaoyao paused, lifting her head, about to reject him. Suddenly, a voice with a hint of a smile came from behind her. Yaoyao, I don't think Auntie wants you to date in high school. Puppy love is forbidden in number 1 middle school. Shui Yaoyao's back froze. Even without turning back, she knew who the person was. The boy who confessed to her looked at Jiang Zhua, who was holding a cigarette in one hand and had an outstanding aura. His eyes widened. Young Master Jiang. Jiang Zhua walked over, a cigarette in one hand, the other naturally placed on Shui Yaoyao's shoulder. He whispered into her ear, why don't you tell your classmates that you can't date for the next 3 years? MMH? Shui Yaoyao's body stiffened even more. She knew Jiang Zhua was reminding her of the time limit of their contract. She couldn't have a boyfriend for the next 3 years, that was the condition they had agreed on from the start. The boy didn't know what was going on. He really thought that she was more sensitive in high school and had to wait until after her sophomore year. His eyes dimmed. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. This was the first time someone had confessed to her. In the past, she had never been discovered by anyone, so why would anyone confess to her? Shui Yaoyao looked up and said, sorry. The boy interrupted her with a smile. It's okay. You want to go to C University, right? I'll apply for that school too. This time, Shui Yaoyao was really stunned. When she said these words, it was a long time ago. At that time, she hadn't slimmed down and hadn't become an official Supreme Alliance member. She had just returned to school. How did you know? The boy looked at Shui Yaoyao, his gaze deep. The first time I noticed you, you were helping your brother pack his bag. I always felt that you were very gentle. After that, I unknowingly wanted to know more about you, so I asked around. Shui Yaoyao was shocked. She never thought that someone would notice her at that time. Moreover, this person had always been a topic of discussion among girls. The boy noticed Shui Yaoyao's gaze and smiled again, his face a little red. You probably don't remember, but there was one time when I hurt my leg while playing basketball. I was sitting at the railing and you happened to pass me a band-aid. You even helped me wash my wound with water. At that time, I wanted to tell you that I really like you, Shui Yaoyao, I really like you. Shui Yaoyao's eyes trembled slightly. She looked into the boy's clear eyes. She wasn't like what he thought, he deserved a better girl. At least not someone like her who had already signed a contract with someone else. Jiang Zhua stood beside Shui Yaoyao. He looked at the person's side profile, his fingers subconsciously tightened. The frustration in his chest intensified with Shui Yaoyao's reaction, as though he was really about to lose something. He pulled Shui Yaoyao's wrist over, his smile devilish. She won't go to sea university, she will only come to a university. Anne. I forgot to tell you, actually, we are in a relationship like yours. With that, Jiang Zhua pulled Shui Yaoyao into his arms, followed by a kiss, even though it was just a light peck. But at that moment, the boy was already frozen on the spot. Looking at this scene, his throat felt like it was blocked by something, and it was a little sour and uncomfortable. Jiang Zhua didn't give him a chance to speak, his fingers holding Shui Yaoyao's wrist as he strode out of the school. Along the way, many people turned back to look at them. Is that young Master Jiang? Yes, it really is. Why is young Master Jiang here? Did he come back with young Master Qin to give a speech as an outstanding graduate? When did that happen? Young Master Jiang doesn't come here often. Isn't the person he's holding Shui Yaoyao's hand? Didn't Shui Yaoyao do all sorts of shameless things to chase after young Master Jiang, making him annoyed? Why is it now? You still don't know? Know what? Shui Yaoyao's mother married into the Jiang family. Young Master Jiang is probably here to bring her home. Stop spreading rumors. Although Shui Yaoyao really liked young Master Jiang, she never did anything. It's just that her diary seemed to have been leaked by someone. Everyone has one or two crushes. If you continue spreading rumors, it'll be too much. I'm relieved to hear that. Even though I don't hate Shui Yaoyao, she shouldn't have chased after young Master Jiang. The difference between them is too big. Shui Yaoyao listened to the discussions, but she didn't seem to feel much. It was probably because she had heard it for too long and was used to the difference between them. Similarly, she knew that if she caused a ruckus in school, it would only embarrass Jiang Zhua. There wasn't a need. It was probably because she had calmed down that she handled things differently from before. There's no one here now, you can let go of me. After leaving the school, Shui Yaoyao spoke calmly. She was very protective of her hand, not because she was spoiled, but because she had to participate in the most important competition tomorrow. The National League had finally come to this stage. Shui Yaoyao placed all her thoughts on it. She didn't notice that Jiang Zhua's side profile was so cold that it wasn't normal. Jiang Zhua was wondering why she couldn't be like before. Even when she had heard the boy's confession, her reaction had become the reason for Jiang Zhua's subconscious annoyance. He knew he wasn't in the right state of mind, but the scene just now was like a well-edited movie, replaying in his mind continuously. Jiang Zhua clenched his fists, his voice turning cold. I brought you out to let you know your current status. Shui Yaoyao looked at him. I already know. Today isn't the appointed time, I need to play a few games. As for the problem you are worried about, it won't happen for the next 3 years. Young Master Jiang, please do as you please. He had said before that he didn't like dirty people, and the hint he gave her was very obvious. But Shui Yaoyao didn't understand. She had already told him to do as he pleased, but he still followed behind her. At the start, his expression was cold. After walking for a while, when he saw that she had really gone to the internet cafe, his expression turned nonchalant. He even got Uncle Ian to open a computer and sat beside her. Shui Yaoyao didn't bother about him. Young Master's mood was probably that carefree sometimes. She took out her phone and opened Her Highness Zhou's WeChat. She was prepared to let Her Highness Zhou play a game with her so they could familiarize themselves with the game. The moment she typed, the phone was snatched over. Jiang Zhua looked at her, his usual demeanor at the nightclub. The person you're looking for is being beaten up by Qin Mo. Are you sending him a WeChat message so that Qin Mo can beat him up even more? The truth was just as Jiang Zhua had said. Bo Jiu sat in the car, thinking about how to resist the Almighty's beauty and interrogation. As for the classroom, she wasn't worried. She wouldn't act so casually if she hadn't done some preparations. She was worried about what other tricks the Almighty had up his sleeves. The kiss and singing through the mask proved that the Almighty was 90% suspicious of her. Only the Almighty would suspect her. Even until now, Smith hadn't thought of her. There was also the fight at the square. If the Almighty had brought along the special forces from the cinema, she would have been caught on the spot even if Hoshino had been there. Hence, luck was important in such a huge gamble. Bojo smiled mischievously. She wasn't going to admit it was her. That was the only benefit of being reborn. Young master, we're here. The driver stopped the car. Bojo's ears twitched. Chin-mo spoke faintly into her ears through the windbreaker. Do you remember whose mask it is? Bojo asked in confusion. Isn't it Brother Mo's? Chin-mo didn't reply. He glanced at the youngster wrapped in his windbreaker and reached out to carry her into the building, just like how he had carried a sack in school. Young master, this is... Madame Zhang rushed over hurriedly. She could only see the youngster's long legs. Chin-mo replied, Young Master Zhou. Bojo could clearly hear Madame Zhang's ah. This time, she was embarrassed. Unlike what Bojo had expected, the Almighty didn't interrogate her immediately. Instead, he cuffed her left wrist to the chair. Then he walked out. Bojo reached out to remove the windbreaker. But the Almighty's voice came from outside. Princess, look at her. Princess looked as though he had been entrusted with something important. He leaped up valiantly, landing on top of her head. Then he sat there motionlessly. Seriously. It was rather heavy for such a fat cat to be placed on top of her head. Princess looked solemn as he sat there, wagging his tail. This was the first time Bojo felt that her appearance was stupid. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone around. Chin-mo had come out because of a call from Fatty. Captain, I just checked and got the footage. Little Spade didn't climb the wall, he was sleeping in the classroom and was punished with frog jumps. Captain, do you want to watch Little Spade do the frog jumps? It's enough to make you laugh for the entire day. Fatty's voice turned softer as he spoke. Even through the phone, he could feel his captain's icy cold aura. Little Spade, what exactly did you do to make Captain feel so down? Was he in the classroom the entire time? Chin-mo's gaze dimmed. Didn't he go out? It should be, with his captain's words, Fatty started to doubt himself. Chin-mo replied faintly, I understand, send me all the footage. Yes. After Fatty hung up, he touched his forehead, which was covered in sweat. Captain's aura was exceptionally strong today. Was it because of the finals tomorrow? Fatty wasn't aware that before Chin-mo's call, Director Huang had sent him a message. It was regarding the motorcycle. We've found out who the owner is, but the car was reported lost a day ago. The person who lost the car is also from the esports industry, but he isn't from Tokyo. He's the captain of the Japanese team, Yusishin. We've checked his background, the esports industry is really different, even the young master of the mafia is there. However, we've eliminated his alibi. He was in a video conference with a bunch of Dragon Mouth subordinates that day, and the staff can testify that he was looking for his tomahawk. We followed the trail and confirmed that the car wasn't just transferred once, it had been transferred before, which means that he really lost the car. When he saw Yusishin's name, Chin-mo's gaze changed. The further he looked, the colder his gaze became. That was because he recalled the two figures that had disappeared in front of his eyes. They had a tacit understanding with each other. Chin-mo lowered his lids and typed. It's true that the car was lost, but who do you think would have the guts to steal a car from the Mafia young master? Or is the Mafia young master just a decoration and the tomahawk can be stolen so easily? Director Huang was confused. Isn't Z always that bold? Chapter 978. Hoshino saw through Yusishin's thoughts and knew it was a good chance to leave some leeway. I'm not sure either. Yusishin glanced over at Hoshino, narrowing his eyes. If anyone dared to lie to his vice captain, he would be furious. If you're not sure, then let's wait and see. The people from the Key Case Investigation Unit came today, and they're really smart. They immediately found me. I don't know who gave them the information, but it's obvious that they're starting to suspect you. I understand, I'll be careful. Hoshino's attitude was always the same, gentle as jade, but in reality, he was more tenacious than anyone else. This was something Yusishin found interesting. Tomorrow is the finals between Supreme Alliance and Xiangnan. As an international team, you and I will be there. We can study Spade Z. Yusishin said this because the Japanese would be up against either Xiangnan or Supreme Alliance. Regardless of which team won the finals, it would be difficult for them to fight against them. They wanted to see the difference between them, and the other reason was because he was still doubting Bojio's authenticity. Instead of looking at Hoshino and not being able to say anything, he might as well use this opportunity to ask the other party involved. That night was destined to be a sleepless one. Too many people were waiting for the finals. Lin Feng wasn't aware of the others. He laid on his bed, unable to fall asleep because he had seen something he shouldn't have. Hence, he stood up, preparing to stretch his limbs. Unexpectedly, while he was walking, he met a girl from the same school. The girl was walking with her dog, and Lin Feng followed her for a while. They chatted happily. Lin Feng didn't notice Yunhu, who was out for a night run. After Lin Feng returned home, whistling as he prepared to enter the house, a voice came from beside him. Are you in a good mood? Lin Feng paused and turned around. He patted his chest and said, Hu Zi, you'll scare people by appearing so suddenly. Yunhu's expression didn't look good. Fortunately, the night was in the way. He stood there with one hand in his pocket. He didn't walk towards Lin Feng. His entire being seemed to have melted into the night fog. His tone was calm. What did you and that girl talk about? You seemed so happy. It's just something I usually play with. Lin Feng didn't really care. Yunhu clenched his fists tightly because he knew that the girl had once wanted to confess to the guy in front of him, but he didn't know why she hadn't. It was probably because of a certain someone's uncertainty. He had to admit that this girl was smart. If she didn't confess, she could be with that guy every day. When the time was right, she could say that she liked him, and the effect would be 100 times better. That was it. Yunhu felt as though something was stuck in his throat. This was because he knew very well that Lin Feng had always wanted to find a girlfriend. Even though he had already promised to give it a try and be responsible to him, in essence, that fellow still liked girls. In just a few seconds, Yunhu thought of many things. When the words reached the tip of his tongue, they turned into a sentence. It isn't just for fun, right? You have a movie date too. Lin Feng paused when he heard this. Yunhu's rationality was already on the verge of collapse when he saw Lin Feng chatting and laughing with the girl. Now that he saw Lin Feng's reaction, his eyes sunk. Do you have any self-awareness that you already have a boyfriend? Lin Feng, who was being lectured, frowned. In order to understand Yunhu's intentions, he downloaded a dating app. There were many people who had greeted Yunhu. There was even one who had gone out for a drink. He had only taken a short walk with a girl, and this person's words were so harsh. It was probably a mistake right from the start. Lin Feng still couldn't get used to it. He raised his lids and looked at Yunhu. I saw the messages on your dating app. Actually, do you think that the person who often leaves you messages is more suitable for you? The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw Yunhu's reply to that person. It was because he saw Yunhu's reply to that person. He thought that the two of them had a good relationship in private. If it had been a normal person, someone like Yunhu wouldn't have agreed to meet up with that person. Lin Feng didn't know that the meeting that time was entirely because Yunhu couldn't get it. He just wanted to go out and relax and didn't think much about it. However, he had never imagined that things had already reached this stage. He still said that perhaps the other person was more suitable for him. He was pushing him away. He was the only one who cared about this relationship. As for Lin Feng, it was obvious that he was a straight man. But when he heard those words, Yunhu couldn't help but clench his fists. His chest felt as though there was a rock pressing down on it. Lin Feng lowered his head and said, "I saw both of your replies. That person is going to study abroad." "Actually, who? Have you ever thought that because we grew up together, you can't tell if it's because you like me or because you're used to me, so what exactly are you trying to say?" When Yunhu said this, his throat felt a little stifled. Lin Feng glanced up with a rare seriousness. "I think it's really stupid for us to try dating. I drank too much that night. Why don't you change the method and let me atone for my sins?" The reason why Lin Feng said this was because he saw the common topic between that person and Yunhu online. In reality, he and Yunhu didn't have this point. Other than gaming, their interests and studies were different. It was rare for them to be on the same level. It was probably because the older he grew, the more he wanted to inherit his family's company. Yunhu, on the other hand, was pursuing something of a higher level. A famous overseas university had personally sent a letter for him to do research. Lin Feng could even imagine the difference between him and Yunhu in the future. Now, they still had games to talk about. When that time came, they probably wouldn't have anything to talk about. After all, in real life, two people on different levels wouldn't have a topic to talk about. Over time, they would become like his parents. Even though Lin Feng's family was wealthy, that was how Father Lin and Mother Lin interacted. That was why Lin Feng wanted to find a girl who had a cheerful personality and didn't think too much like him. She would only sleep after eating and occasionally go to the supermarket on the weekends. That was the kind of life he would have. But it was obvious that Yunhu's daily life was much more elegant than his. Sometimes, he thought that it probably had something to do with the fact that his grandfather was gone and the Yun family was still in power. Even though the two families lived opposite each other, their nature was different. He and Yunhu used to be people of the same world. In the future, they would rarely be. The uncertainty of their youth faded. How long could Yunhu's love last? Hence, he was really stupid. Why didn't he think of giving it a try back then? It would ruin their relationship if they tried it once. Lin Feng didn't want to see that in 1 year, 3 years, or even 5 years, they would have nothing to say to each other and be together reluctantly. That wasn't what he expected. He predicted that by the time that person came back from abroad, he would also be living like a dog. That way, the difference between them wouldn't be especially big. Listening to the man's words, Yunhu suddenly felt as though he was on a roller coaster. Not long ago, he had finally agreed to try it out with him. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember how happy he had been. But because of the appearance of a girl, he felt that it was stupid to give it a try. He wanted to retract everything. At the end of the day, he would never be comparable to those girls. Yunhu also knew that this wasn't the most painful time. After they broke up, with the arrival of graduation, this person would soon have a girlfriend. What he was most afraid of was that one day, that person would hold a girl's waist and laugh at him. I'm going to get married. Whenever he thought of that scene at night, a nerve in the depths of his heart would be pulled. The pain made him want to bend over. If he hadn't tasted the happiness in heaven, perhaps it wouldn't be so unbearable. Ever since that guy said that he would try dating, he had been very nice to him. It was as if they were dating. Although when he held his hand and interlocked their fingers, he would still mutter in a low voice or stiffen his whole body, no matter which reaction it was, it only made him feel happy. It was as though happiness meant that as long as he was with this guy, it didn't matter what they did, including those childish things like holding hands and sharing a bowl of instant noodles. Or when he was tired from practicing his hand speed, that person's head would lean over. Often, he would be the one doing the review. He would lean against him to sleep, just to be able to accompany him. It had been like this since the beginning. But in the future, it would no longer be like this. After the National League, this guy would take over the company and gradually leave the esports industry. Not only would their gaming time be reduced, even the number of times they would meet wouldn't be as frequent as now. Because graduation would mean that they would really be adults, Yunhu understood this guy. Since he mentioned it, it meant that he had decided to do it. He wanted to end their relationship. It was obvious. Yun-hoo understood. Because of that, even his breath felt cold. Admit it, even if this person temporarily agreed to date you because you tricked him, he will never fall in love with you. Yun-hoo had to suppress all his emotions to swallow the question of why not try again. Instead, he stretched out his arm and trapped that person against the wall. His gaze was a little low. You want to redeem yourself in another way? Sure, I don't have too many conditions. After the National League, if we win Xiangnan, you will let me sleep back. With that, Yun-hoo released his hand that was pressing on that person's wrist. He took one last deep look at Lin Feng before walking out of the room. Lin Feng was left leaning against the wall, his entire expression petrified. Sleep, sleep, sleep back? Did Yun-hoo want to *CK him? Lin Feng's first reaction was anger. After his anger subsided, he thought carefully about why Yun-hoo would suggest such a method. He had seen other people's replies. In their industry, people like Yun-hoo were rare and would never bow down to others. He had taken advantage of Yun-hoo and now, he wanted Yun-hoo to take revenge. There wasn't anything wrong with this logic. If that would make Yun-hoo feel better, Lin Feng took a deep breath. If it wasn't half an hour, it was at least an hour. He smoked non-stop, extinguishing one cigarette after another. In the end, he straightened his body and took out his phone. He sent a message to the familiar profile picture. Sure, let's sleep back and we'll be even. The unique sound effect of WeChat rang out. Yun-hoo, who was sitting in front of the computer, suddenly didn't know where to touch. When he saw the message, his gaze stiffened. He glanced at the window opposite him, swallowing the bitterness in his throat. The last thing he wanted to do was to be even with someone. Being even meant that both parties were even and they didn't owe each other anything. Perhaps, ending this relationship didn't mean anything to him. Yun-hoo chuckled. When he placed his phone down, even his black hair hung down. He didn't turn on the lights, just sitting in front of the computer. After a long while, he made a call with a hoarse voice. I have the answer to the question your school asked me previously. After the competition, I'll head over. Ah, that's great. The person on the other side spoke in pure English. We look forward to your joining, Yun. Yun-hoo couldn't hear what the person behind him was saying. He reported his passport number numbly and filled in some information before sending it to the designated email. After he was done, it was almost 11 p.m. After the competition, they would really be worlds apart. Hence, he didn't want to have any regrets for this competition. He also didn't want to see that person smoking in the toilet with reddened eyes after losing the competition and blaming himself. That person, when he was working hard and playing games seriously, was more adorable than ever. The night sky darkened. Under normal circumstances, the internet cafe would be open for supper. Usually, at this time, the boss loved to stand in the middle with the air conditioner and order takeaway. However, at this moment, he closed the shop early and was making the final settlement. Before the customer left, he smiled. Tomorrow is the finals, right? Did you meet Xiangnan? Finally, you have to work hard, uncle. This was the fifth customer who said that. The customer wasn't a fan of Yin Wuyao. He held a cigarette in his mouth, changing his hand. I will. In the distance, there was a tall building that pierced through the clouds. The Feng family was on the top floor. Feng Yi sat on the sofa, finalizing the next day's schedule and the order of the fans' entrance. After hanging up, he tugged at his tie and saw his brother checking the things he needed to bring: the team uniform, the standard earpiece, and the wrist guard. Chapter 979. Feng Yi glanced over at his brother, breaking into a smile. Every elder brother would have a sense of accomplishment when they saw their younger brother. Ah, this kid has finally grown up. After Feng Shang was done checking, he gave Coco a call. The kid had good intentions. He knew that Coco had been under a lot of pressure recently and wanted to console him. But before he could speak, the person on the other end said, "You don't want me to care about what others think of me, right?" "I know." And. Feng Shang wanted to say something but was interrupted by Coco again. Coco interrupted him again. "And the maneuvering, right? Don't worry, I'm already very good at it. Brother's skills are amazing, and I have millions of fans. Tomorrow, I'll definitely lead the way." Feng Shang spoke again. "No, it's not what?" "Ah, the wrist guard, right? I brought everything, don't worry." Feng Shang wanted to say something, but he was blocked. His face was red from holding back. It wasn't easy for a child to say something like that. "Who wants to talk to you about that? I just want you to relax and remember to bring your rabbit." Coco paused, muttering, "You aren't stuttering anymore." Feng Shang paused as well. Coco coughed heavily. "I know, I was nervous just now, that's why I said so much. I'm not nervous anymore." With that, Coco threw himself onto the bed, his face blocked by the plush toy. "Feng Shang, we are finally going up against Xiangnan. In the past, many people said that Supreme Alliance relied on our looks to win. Even though that wasn't wrong, this time, we can finally tell everyone that Supreme Alliance has skills." Feng Shang didn't know what to say, but his heart hadn't stopped. They could finally stand in the National League to prove themselves. This was something he had never dared to think about in the past. Feng Shang glanced out of the window, the throbbing in his eyes causing Feng Yi to stand up. "It's past 11, go to sleep." Alarm clock. Feng Shang was afraid he would wake up late. Feng Yi chuckled lightly. "I'll wake all of you up tomorrow morning, the competition is at 10 a.m., there's enough time." "Okay." Feng Shang was very nimble when he said one word. After entering the room, he turned off the lights and lay on the bed. Still worried, Feng Shang sat up and confirmed the things he wanted to bring. Shui Yao was in the same situation as him. Jiang Zhua, who was lying on the bed, raised his brows slightly. Even when the person laid back down, he was still holding onto the strap of the backpack. Shui Yao's gaze fell on the logo on the backpack. It was the symbol of Supreme Alliance. A ball of fire burned in his eyes. Shui Yao pressed her hand on her heart, telling herself to have a good night's sleep so that she would be in a better condition for tomorrow's match. Pa. The dart hit an esports poster on the wall. That was the worst year Supreme Alliance had ever lost. Lin Feng still remembered that year. He really cried like a little bastard. It was not because of anything else, but because of the way the man lowered his head. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, when had that guy ever been so miserable? If only his mechanics had been a little better, a little smarter, a little more thoughtful. Perhaps he could hold on until the captain returned. The entire team's pressure was on Yunhu. But he didn't even share the burden. Lin Feng looked at the poster that he had shot. Then he jumped back and threw himself onto the bed. In real life, the gap between him and Yunhu was huge. In the game, he didn't want to be left behind too much. This was probably the last time they fought side by side. He didn't want to have any regrets. He wanted to win back all the glory from that year. He didn't want to be a burden to that person anymore. That was probably Lin Feng's only feeling at this moment. Qin family. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster in his arms. He got up and prepared the things for the youngster. He opened his laptop and logged into his game account. Just for a moment. The world seemed to be boiling. There was a constant stream of messages. What's going on? Why is Almighty Qin online at this time? Is he too nervous before the match? That's possible. My Coco was a little distracted during the live stream today. He must be thinking about tomorrow's match. Who wouldn't be nervous if their opponent is Xiangnan? They didn't know that Qin Mo had come online to give someone a self-made silver gun. It should have been given to the youngster on the bed a few days ago, but due to recent events, it hadn't been given out. If Feng Yi had seen Qin Mo giving the silver gun to Bojiu, he would have been shocked. The silver gun had a special meaning. It was a silver gun that Qin Mo had made when he had first started playing the game. Qin Mo would fuse any good material into it. In that year, this silver gun had become Qin Mo's most commonly used weapon until the character changed and the 3000 knife cutting appeared. The silver gun had always been there. It could already be called a treasured weapon. Back then, the materials obtained in the game were all rare materials. Now, they were hard to find. That was how precious the silver gun was. But now, the Almighty had given it to Zhou. Xiangnan's Zhao Sanpang was the most agitated when Qin Mo came online. He typed in the Alliance's group chat. Qin Mo, are you really nervous? If you are, just say it, we won't laugh at you. Because of this, many players in the group jumped out and started making jokes one after another. Qin Mo glanced at the page, arching a brow. He moved his mouse and sent a video leisurely into the group chat. The video wasn't anything else, it was the secret hidden in the electronic igniter that Bojiu had given him. Zhao Sanpang was still sitting there with his legs crossed, typing furiously, shouting that he wanted to challenge Qin Mo to a duel. The others in the group shared the same sentiments. They wanted to use this rare opportunity to tease Qin Mo unexpectedly. Qin Mo sent a video over. Zhao Sanpang assumed it was a useful video. When he first opened it, he was watching it seriously. Towards the end, the corners of his mouth twitched. What the hell is this thing? Qin Mo and Little Spade's lovey-dovey clip? It wasn't just Zhao Sanpang, the others who opened the video, including the other teams, were forced to recommend the Mo and Zhou couple. Who said Qin Mo was nervous? If he came out, they wouldn't beat him to death. He wasn't nervous, he was even more shameless than usual. At this moment, Qin Mo typed a line of words. I'm looking at the present Spade gave me. Single people like you probably wouldn't understand. Everyone knew that Zhao Sanpang's greatest pain was not having a partner. Qin Mo's words caused Zhao Sanpang to go offline in tears. He turned towards the person beside him. Captain, I would like to request to keep a close eye on Qin Mo tomorrow. There's no need. Almighty Shao stood up. Supreme Alliance has a fatal weakness, it is now showing. Zhao Sanpang was confused. Weakness? Where is it? Chapter 980. Weakness? Zhao Sanpang's eyes lit up like a howling wolf. In his mind, Supreme Alliance was much stronger than before. Especially after witnessing Little Spade and that shameless Qin Mo's teamwork, he felt that he wouldn't be able to stop them. Now that he heard his captain's words, he was pleasantly surprised. However, Xiao Feng didn't look very happy. His eyes looked a little gloomy. Zhao Sanpang called out again. Captain, what is Supreme Alliance's weakness that you mentioned? Qin Mo, Zhao Sanpang's expression froze the moment he heard Xiao Feng's name. Qin Mo? That insanely strong fellow? How was that possible? His hand injury hasn't healed. Xiao Feng stood up, his eyes fixed on Zhao Sanpang. I'm 100% sure now. Zhao Sanpang opened his mouth with difficulty. But the teamwork between him and Little Spade was clearly incredible. In a 2v2, no one would be able to stop them. Even if Qin Mo's hand wasn't healed, Spade Z's speed would be able to make up for his weakness. Xiao Feng pointed at the map on the screen. Even though this is a siege game, the location isn't fixed. In the past, no one dared to enter Supreme Alliance's jungle because if they weren't careful, they would be killed. But now, it's different. Supreme Alliance wants to defeat us, so they have to drag the competition to the team battle. It's all about teamwork and coordination in the middle and jungle. Supreme Alliance's sorcerer is a newbie. Even though he's skilled, his awareness isn't enough to keep up with Qin Mo's pace. Spade Z won't always be by Qin Mo's side. A wandering hero would be useless if he's restrained. After listening to his captain's analysis, Zhao Sanpang forgot what he wanted to say. He was well aware of his captain's ability. It wasn't just him. Almost everyone knew that their captain had an exceptional ability to make judgments. This was also why people often compared Qin Mo to their captain. Because they were truly evenly matched opponents. The computer screen was still emitting a faint blue light. At this moment, a person walked in. She was wearing a team uniform and high heels. She was very beautiful. She had a slender waist, long legs, and a good figure. She was a domineering lady in the esports industry. This was the nickname that the fans had given Goddess Luoluo. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. As she had been playing for too long, her voice was a little hoarse. That person probably never thought that there would be a day when he would need someone to protect him. Xiao Feng didn't say anything. Beauty Luo smiled and placed her hand on his shoulder. Captain, you don't feel good seeing your CP in such dire straits, do you? Xiao Feng glanced at her, his expression indifferent. There's no such thing as being down and out in the esports arena. You can only give it your all. You're handsome, so whatever you say is right. At this point, Beauty Luo glanced at Fatty. Brother Fatty, you're affecting my pursuit of my idol. Xiao Feng, Zhao Sanpang thought. Damn it, I've been attacked by 2 public displays of affection in one night. These people are inhumane. I thought your idol was Spade Z. Xiao Feng glanced at his subordinate. Beauty Luo smiled. I like him too. Playing esports allows you to gather countless male idols. In the past, I liked Qin Mo the most. His abstinence, TSK, no wonder he was pushed down by Spade Z. He was already at the door, but when he heard this, he turned abruptly. What did you say? Qin Mo is the one at the bottom? F***CK, little Spade is good. He's manly. That's why you can't look down on my brother Spade, Beauty Luo reminded him. Zhao Sanpang arched a brow. Don't worry, someone is restraining him. Beauty Luo chuckled lightly. That's good, we can finally compete with Supreme Alliance openly. Qin Mo once attacked the 3 of us alone. Isn't it time to get back at him? Women are the most vicious, Zhao Sanpang commented objectively. But, I like it. Regardless of the situation, giving one's all in the competition was the true respect for one's opponent. However, this did not affect the relationship between friend and foe that was born in this generation. Before Zhao Sanpang went to bed, he took out his phone and scrolled through his official Weibo. He wanted to see how his adorable fans were cheering him on. Unexpectedly, the first thing he saw was a post from his good friend. It was a chat history in the Alliance's WeChat group with a video attached. It summed it up in one sentence. I can't be the only one being fed dog food. Qin Mo's video had caused a huge public outcry. There were so many singles in the esports industry. Zhao Sanpang would definitely join in and repost it, but he hadn't expected his fans to show their concern. Fatty, don't cry, stand up and masturbate. It must be hard to watch almighty Qin flaunt his love every day. Don't worry, you won't get the chance. Fatty, I've liked you for 3 years. I just want to ask you, it's been 3 years, where's your girlfriend or boyfriend? Don't be like that, we love Fatty so we have to be considerate. Are there any more videos like this? Fatty, watch more, you can find inspiration. Who knows, maybe one day someone will take a liking to you. Zhao Sanpang. F***CK. Take back that 10,000 years limit. Take it back. Unknowingly, the 2 of them were trending again. Honestly, the fans were relieved to see how close their idols were in the esports industry. Because only in such a healthy competitive environment would they be able to see an exciting competition. At this moment, in the crime squad, Lin Shintao stood outside the door, his eyes fixed on Director Huang. Regardless, please promise me that the captain will head out tomorrow to watch the competition. Someone has proven that he isn't the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice, right? Little Huang had never seen a person with such perseverance. He had been pestering him for 5 hours. Wherever he went, this handsome guy followed him. Even when he went to the toilet, this kid followed him. Little Huang almost had kidney failure just by looking at him. Kids nowadays, why were they so stubborn? Even though he isn't the culprit, he was a part of the organization. There are many things we need to understand, Director Huang said. Lin Chintao licked his chapped lips. He didn't do anything evil, he didn't say anything even after you brought him in. This competition is too important to him. It's the National League because of Qin Mo and Xiao Feng. Mr. Huang, do you know that he wasn't inferior to either of them in the past? Chapter 981. Director Huang didn't know much about esports, but when he saw Lin Chintao's pleading eyes, he hesitated. Rao Rong couldn't leave the crime squad, he was the only one who knew the murderer's background and rough appearance. Besides, Rao Rong was in danger, the murderer might kill him to silence him. Bringing him out of the crime squad was the best way to explain the situation. Right at this moment, an off-road vehicle that didn't belong to the military stopped quietly beside him. Two Special Forces soldiers in camouflage uniforms hopped out. Director Huang was stunned when he saw their faces. Why are you guys in the city? Director Huang, what are you talking about? We are humans too, if we aren't in the city, where are we? Magician walked over, a devilish smile on his face. My boss wants us to bring someone along. Director Huang arched a brow. Who? Rao Rong. Magician chuckled. Director Huang, don't panic, the crime squad is complicated and there is a traitor. It wouldn't be safe to leave an important witness here. Besides, we are humane and he is an esports player. Regardless of the reason, we should let him see what he wants to see. Those are my boss's words. Besides, the crime squad can't afford to lose an important witness, so the handsome me will stay in place of Rao Rong. Director Huang wanted to say more. Magician reached out, producing an identification. There were 5 stars on it, the country's special forces. This meant that they had to cooperate with the other party. Director Huang puffed out his big belly. The crime squad isn't a problem, but Rao Rong might not cooperate. He hasn't said a word since he came in, he might not leave with you. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Magician turned towards Lin Chintao. Boss said that as long as we bring this brother in, Rao Rong will leave with us. Lin Chintao was speechless. He was very curious who the boss was. Director Huang's struggle was futile, he could only lead the way and open a room. There was everything in the room, just that it was a little small. Rao Rong laid on the bed, his back facing them. Director Huang called him twice, but he didn't respond. Lin Chintao's eyes reddened as he looked at the tall figure. Captain. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong's shoulders trembled slightly before he bolted upright. His movements were agile and he didn't look like he was asleep. He glanced at Lin Chintao, his voice raspy. Why are you here? I'm here to pick you up. Lin Chintao said as he took out his phone. Look, the official Weibo account has already started posting. Don't you want to see who wins in the end? Rao Rong's gaze deepened. I'm no longer interested in esports. You're lying. Lin Chintao flipped through his phone again. If you're really not interested in esports anymore, why didn't you agree to Boss Zhang's message asking you to arrange for his nephew to compete and make him famous? It's because he still has esports in his heart. Rao Rong paused. Lin Chintao didn't care whether he was willing or not. He grabbed him and said to the special forces, let's go. Rao Rong was startled, he probably hadn't expected the chatterbox who used to follow him around would become so bold. But he couldn't shake his hand off. To a professional esports player, the hand was the most important. Director Huang watched as Rao Rong furrowed his brows, allowing them to drag him out. His gaze was filled with disbelief. After all, Rao Rong had been here for 2 days and 1 night, which showed that he didn't trust anyone. On the surface, he appeared refined, but just a look at his emotionless eyes showed that he had never tried to accept anyone. It was probably related to his past. Director Huang had seen Rao Rong in his youth. He had been as dazzling as the sun, but now, he was like water in a deep pond, separated by a layer of cold fog. Not many people could get close to him. Magician laughed, locking himself up. He turned to Director Huang. Our boss didn't guess wrongly, did he? Director Huang didn't want to see him again, intending to slam the door shut. Wait a minute. Magician arched a brow. Order a takeaway for me. You guys don't have any good food here, I'm going to die in the line of duty. Director Huang thought to himself, how can I order takeaway when my witness is gone? How can you be so optimistic? He rejected the order decisively. After slamming the door shut, the resentment in his heart dissipated. Magician laughed lightly, caressing the bridge of his nose. He glanced over and pressed down on his earpiece. Young master, everything has been arranged according to your instructions. Do your best for tomorrow's competition. Your voice is too cheap. Qin Mo's voice was calm as he hung up. Magician. How could I be despised by my boss for a mission in the middle of the night? That boy must be beside him. Magician's guess was right on this point. Qin Mo walked to the large bed not far away. He looked at the furry head hidden in the quilt and smirked. Then he bent down and lifted the person's chin. He kissed the face that he loved and hated at the same time. The next day, Feng Yi woke up earlier than anyone else, making phone calls to wake her up. When he called, the youngster opened her eyes, caressing her messy silver hair. She stretched lazily before standing up and placing the phone on her ear. Hello. Little Spade, it's time to wake up. Feng Yi was indeed a qualified manager, putting on his smiling face early in the morning. Bo Jiu yawned, glancing at the Almighty who was still on the bed. She replied devilishly, he's already awake. The sight of the Almighty lying on the bed made her heart itch to bully him. His thick lashes were the same as when he had been young. All right. Feng Yi smiled. Let's meet at the entrance of the club in an hour. All right. Bo Jiu reached for her trousers. They were wrinkled and couldn't be worn anymore. She couldn't help but feel troubled. Just as she was hesitating if she should take a shower, another phone rang. This time, it was from the Almighty. Bo Jiu hadn't intended to pick up the call for the Almighty, but when she saw that it was Feng Yi, she lifted her lips and answered. Hello. Feng Yi. His first reaction was to check if he had pressed the repeat button. No, it was indeed young Master Qin. Bo Jiu admired Feng Yi's pause and was about to laugh. Chapter 982. Bo Jiu didn't react. On the other end of the line, Feng Yi's lips started to twitch. Bastard. He had been fed a huge mouthful of dog food so early in the morning. This world. Feng Yi didn't want to say anything else and hung up decisively. Bo Jiu heard the busy tone and glanced over. Brother Mo, you seem to have frightened her. Qin Mo arched a brow, sweeping the screen before reaching for his phone. Just as he was about to reach for it, the person in his arms pushed him into the blanket. Qin Mo's fingers stilled, watching the silver-haired youngster with bright eyes and a smile on her face. That furry head and two tufts of hair arched up like two ears. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like his cat. All it lacked was a tail behind it that could be wagged here and there. But after a night of sleep, she had become bolder. What are you doing? Qin Mo allowed the youngster to press against his chest, his elegant and handsome face unchanged. Bo Jiu didn't intend to do anything, she just stared at the Almighty who had just woken up. She wanted to pounce on him. Her childhood habits were rather harmful and she couldn't restrain herself. If it was any other day, I would be at your mercy, but not today. Qin Mo removed her hand, his tone calm as though he was talking to Princess. Go wash up, don't be so ferocious early in the morning. Bo Jiu. Ferocious? Her. With that, Qin Mo stood up, put on his trousers and walked towards the door. "I'll go get my clothes." Bojo draped the blanket over her body, crossing her long legs as she sat on the bed. She watched the Almighty's erect upper body, looking as though he wasn't interested in her. She pursed her lips stubbornly. The princess arrogantly strolled back and forth in front of her, as if saying, "You've finally been abandoned by your master." Bojo arched a brow, tugging on Princess's tail. Even if she couldn't handle the Almighty, she could still handle a cat. When Qin Mo took the uniform from Madame Zhang, the image of the youngster pouncing on him was still fresh in his mind. For some reason, he felt that this scene was very familiar. Qin Mo didn't know if it was because he liked her too much that he kept thinking about her when she was young. As usual, Auntie Zhang made a Chinese-style breakfast that both of them liked. It was very nutritious. He didn't eat much as most of it went into her stomach. Before he left, he pulled her over, reaching out to pull her collar up, covering her neck. That was when Bojo noticed the hickeys, her ears burning. But she also noticed that every time the Almighty tidied her clothes, his side profile would always be gentle. It seemed like he had been like this since he was young. "What do you mean you've been like this since you were young?" Qin Mo glanced sideways at the youngster's face, his brows furrowing slightly. Bojo didn't expect to blurt out the words she wanted to say. She tilted her head and asked, "Are you trying to say that Brother Mo has always been good at dressing people?" "I didn't wear it for anyone." Qin Mo retracted his hand and looked at the youngster with it in his pocket. Bojo didn't say anything. She thought to herself, where did the little puppy who liked to help her put on clothes come from? Of course, she wouldn't tell the Almighty that. At this moment, Qin Mo suddenly asked, "Speaking of which, did we meet when we were young?" You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.